ARPA funds, particularly for the affordable housing. Is that not for this town meeting? Okay.
So there are ARPA,
They don't need
Andrew,
to
do you want to?
Yeah, it's, oh, sorry. So there are ARPA funds in the FY23 proposed budget. Council can also allocate those at any point during the year. We are planning to have a larger discussion about process for the allocation of those funds at the 22nd meeting.
22nd, okay, February.
Yep,
Okay.
next meeting, yep.
And that's when you're going to, or the city will make some, I don't, is recommendations too strong, but some options on how to spend them, but we won't be voting on it then.
Well, and really, I think the agenda item for the 22nd is really a process conversation, how you want to strategically think about the use of these funds over the next bunch of years. We have lots of ideas. The community has brought forward lots of ideas as well. But the voting on those ideas won't actually happen. We'll have a more robust process about that.
Yes.
Good to know.
We
Thank
have
you.
until the end of 2024 to allocate those funds.
I'm sorry, that was muffled, Andrew.
Sorry, we have until the end of 2024 to allocate those funds.
And 2026 to spend them, correct?
Correct.
So that'll be here before we know it, but the process of discussing that and determining how we spend them will be a little longer and hopefully thoughtful. Okay. So are there any changes? Seeing none. Are there any comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda? And I will note that Councilor Chittenden is, oh, there he is. He has arrived. Okay, welcome. He's eating, lucky dog. Okay, are there any comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda? Seeing none, okay. We'll move on to 5 then, announcements and the city manager's report. So announcements from the council.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Going door to door, it's always, I think, a good practice, an exercise to boot, but in two senses of the word. That you get to talk to people and hear their concerns. And so there are two I wanted to raise tonight. And one has to do with the home insulation program, walking through Chamberlain.
Okay.
I would love to know, and the residents would be very interested in knowing the schedule for that home insulation program. I know that there must be one, because when I talked to Nick about a street, he said that's not at the top of the list. So I would love to know what that list is.
I will include that in my report.
Excellent. And then the second piece of, that I wanted to bring back from residents, Stonehenge residents are very concerned about the amount of traffic that has increased on Spear Street. And we've had those discussions here in council. And there is a request for a stoplight for them to be able to exit and enter, but also for speed limit signs within the Stonehenge complex itself. So I just wanted to pass that on, and I would hope that some response. I did encourage petitions and gathering together in order to, present a, a more united front to the city council. But I told them that I would pass that on.
So they want the city to put speed limits in their
I don't,
street? I
and
mean,
if it's
do we own
if
those?
it's private, then maybe we don't
Are
have
those
the right
private drives, or they're not really streets? They're more like driveways, right?
Well, they're roads.
Are there roads in Stonehenge?
The posts, the mail carriers, I'm sure, drive through and they stick things
Okay.
into their mailboxes. Yeah.
Because unless we are in charge of the roads, I'm not sure we can put up traffic signs, but we can find out some information on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just pause us for a quick minute?
Yes.
I'm getting a chat that people online can't hear us.
Ah.
Are there others online who can hear us? Somebody indicate?
I can hear you just fine if that means
Okay.
anything.
Thank you, Councilor.
I can hear you just fine. This is Roseanne.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry for the
Well,
interruption.
with the mask, though, we probably should get right up to
Even
the,
closer, yeah.
yeah. Okay, Tim, do you have any
Yes.
announcements?
Yes, following on Megan's comments about comments from residents, right, after knocking on doors. One comment I got was the frequency and the timing of the mowing of the edges of the stormwater ponds. It's something that I've brought up before. And, if it's done too early, you take down, they've been doing it twice, once in the spring when the milkweeds just get going, and then they do it again before the milkweeds are done, and probably there are some monarch, chrysalises in there, I don't know. So it'd be great to have a strategy that is conducive to, the types of habitat we want in meadow type fields around the edges. So if they did it once and did it after the first really hard frost, if it was like late October or early November, whatever is feasible, you would have the least impact on the growth of all those natural, flowers and things, and it would be better for the butterflies. The other thing was today I had the opportunity to spend an hour and a half with Mr. Bolduc and Martha Machar at the auditor audition, right, for RHR, which is answer the RFP, right, to do the audit for the city. So that's the first time I've been involved in that process. And we were able to listen to two of their reps, one from Rutland and one from Middlebury, and also the owner himself, Ron, and also have a school district representative and a professor from UVM who's an accountant. So good discussion. I learned things about auditing I didn't know because I just had to ask the questions because I've never been exposed to what the technical details of it are. So thanks for that experience. I appreciate it.
Were there three three companies who were interested? Or
Think there was.
is that right?
Yeah, we only ended up receiving one response to our request for proposal. So only one applied.
Oh, okay. Like last time.
Is it not the same one as, no, it's a different one, right? Okay.
It is the same one.
Okay, I'm sorry, you have
So that was,
anything else?
yeah, that was it, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Matt, do you have any?
Just count me as one of the, I know this is a controversial issue, but count me as one of the people that was very happy to see 12 inches of snow outside my doorstep. And it's a tremendous amount of work to move that snow that Public Works did. And I know I heard some complaints about sidewalks, but it takes a lot of work. And I think the Public Works did a great job. And they did get to a lot of the sidewalks they couldn't get to over the weekend. So thank you
Right.
for everyone that was out in the cold moving snow.
And let me piggyback on that because the positive news that I heard is people love that we are clearing the walking and biking trails in the winter and actually making it possible for them to continue to use them. So they are doing an excellent job. And the residents, I would say, among all the positive comments I heard, that was the top, was thank you for Penny for Paths. And thank you for taking care of our walking and biking trails.
And I'll chime in and say I'm also appreciative of Public Works for all their hard work because that was a lot of snow in a short amount of time, and that's the biggest stump we've had in a while. So
Right.
I'm sure there were some drivers taking rests in between rounds, because they were probably driving for hours and hours and hours. So I appreciate it.
Well, Matt, I'll join you. I love snow.
Okay, good.
I am so glad we didn't get rain, particularly on top of the snow.
Yes.
I'm not, and I'm glad it's southern Vermont tomorrow that's going to get rain. I mean, I'm not happy for them, but I'm certainly glad we are not. I love snow, and I think you can do stuff in it. It helps our economy in many ways. It certainly slows us down in driving. So it's not all bad. It just can be sometimes. I would like to just report on and you'll hear from them, I'm hoping, in the future. But I met with Dave Millam, who is the director of the Green Mountain Habitat, and his development officer, Allison Johnson, and Dawn Filbert. She kind of pulled the meeting together. And we discussed kind of, or I learned more detail about Habitat for Humanity and exactly kind of how they work and what they do. And I came away very excited that this is potentially a wonderful organization with whom the city may want to partner. They also, interestingly, partner with a lot of developers because as zoning requirements in our town and other towns have required the inclusion of affordable housing, they have been able to actually go in and build the affordable housing with their volunteers for the developer. So it keeps the price affordable.
Right.
And it seemed like that would be a wonderful partnership. And there's other organizations that do that. We certainly have partnered with CHT. But this was kind of, they have, 300 to 400 volunteers that work on these houses. And I was unable to actually go to the Habitat structure that they built on Heinsberg Road. But I understand that they literally sold them for about $125,000. So you talk about affordability, because $125,000, they don't make a profit, that paid for the land and the materials. And so all of the plumbing and wiring and all that kind of stuff is done by volunteers, many of whom volunteer every single week. And I just was really impressed and thought, well, this might be a place if when we get to discussing the ARPA money and dedicating some of that to supporting affordable housing, this is the niche that's the hard one. This is the home ownership. This is the housing that really takes people out of poverty. It's wonderful to have subsidized rents, but they're rents, and they're always rents. But a $125,000 mortgage is, that goes back maybe 40 years where you could buy. So it was a wonderful conversation, and I hope at some point that he will come and share with you and answer your questions about, how they work. And then there's other organizations that would be helpful to learn about too. But this was one of the meetings that I went to.
Yeah,
So.
interesting thing I learned too, again, talking to residents, and then I go and look for information, is that these nonprofits that are highly reputed can secure financing in a way that a developer cannot for development of affordable housing, so smaller houses and all these things, so that they are truly a key partner if we wish to have affordable housing, because the banks, after the 2008 housing bubble and crash, are much less likely to provide that financing for affordable smaller units to just any developer. So I really think that's a really important thing for us to know going forward.
And one of the nice things about Habitat is that the owners of those properties have a real vested interest because they have to put in some of their own work
Yeah,
or
they have
time
400
equivalent.
hours of sweat equity.
Yeah, and when under my former employer, I must have worked on at least 10 Habitat houses. And, if I did the job wrong, I'm sorry, but, you go in as a volunteer and they say, here, go do this. And you're like, okay, can you show me how? And then they give you a couple of tries, and next thing you know, you're pounding nails, putting shingles on, chipping off old tile in some bathroom, or, putting up siding, stuff like that. So it's really, and I've worked like in Essex and Winooski and Burlington. This has been in like 4 or 5 towns, and even out in Cambridge, there was a house we worked on too. So it's really satisfying if you get an opportunity to go volunteer for them.
Well, and just one other thing, one of the lovely parts of this is once the home or condo is sold, Habitat gets all their money back and then has the money to move forward and do it all over again. So it's sort of reusing money to continue to build. Now, is this the only answer to affordable housing? Heck, no. But I thought it was a promising one, and I was excited about learning more about it.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, the city manager.
Great, thank you. So just want to also extend my thanks to our Public Works team, and we put together a few data points for the community, just so you kind of get a sense of what that response is to snow emergencies. So during this particular storm, our crew came in at their regular shift on Thursday morning, worked straight through the night, obviously on shifts, so someone go home and someone come back, through until 3 o'clock Thursday or Friday afternoon, and then came back in again at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning to continue to do cleanup. Of course, that's ongoing. You probably saw them out today as well, and that you will throughout the week doing other cleanup. We have 400 lane miles of road to plow. We have 23 miles of path and 55 miles of sidewalks to plow. So just some data points to keep in mind when we're all enjoying that beautiful snow, and wanted to personally thank them for their really hard work out there when the rest of us are snuggled up at home.
What are those 400 miles of road? How much of the trails and the sidewalk?
So 400 lane miles of road. So like Dorset Street counts as four, 4 different lane miles.
Got it.
23 miles of paths and 55 miles of sidewalks.
Okay.
We also had a water break this morning. Another thing that our Public Works team was dealing with at the intersection of Dorset and Grandview Drive.
Yes.
Crews are on site. It's cleaned up, but there likely is some traffic disruption while they were doing that digging, and they will make future repairs.
It disrupted my walk this morning,
It disrupted your walk this morning.
so I saw it all.
Other things they are responding to. As I've done in past meetings, I did want to give you a quick update on COVID in South Burlington. So in the last week, as reported by VDH, we've had 95 new COVID cases in South Burlington. I do want to caveat that with, I think fewer cases are being reported through VDH because more people are relying on at-home tests. So there is that acknowledgement. But that is significantly down. The prior week, we had 254 new cases. So significantly down. Our rate increased 3.7% this week. That's the first time since the middle of December that we haven't seen a double-digit % increase. So hopefully we, like the rest of the state, are declining. The city clerk wanted me to share with you that the ballots are in. She mailed out 294 ballots on Friday. If folks are interested in voting early or by mail, they can call the city clerk's office at 846-4105. And we can send a ballot to your house, or you can stop by City Hall during regular hours to vote, or of course visit us on town meeting day. Wanted to let you know that we are continuing our work on regional dispatch. I haven't talked to you all about that in a while, but I want to use this opportunity to talk to you about because we recently received a $250,000 grant from Homeland Security to fund the startup of that center. We are also watching very closely the $11 million that's before the legislature to transition to all regional dispatch centers, and are really hoping that with multiple different grant funding sources that we can close the gap to those startup costs. So much more to come, but we are.
What was the
Good
figure
news.
from the state?
So we've received $250,000 in grants from Homeland Security
Okay.
so far for consoles.
Oh, and that's from ARPA money, or? That's just-
I don't know what the
Okay.
higher level
I
funding
thought you
source is.
mentioned another pot of
And then-
money from,
Then there's $11 million being considered. The governor mentioned it in his budget address. The state is looking to
okay.
move entirely to a regional dispatch model, and basically get the state out of the business of doing local dispatch. So right now in the budget, my understanding is that there's $11 million to do grants to regional dispatch centers to stand up. So we're tracking that at the at the State House.
And our CIP has an item for next year for
Yes.
some dispatch equipment.
Yes.
And did I ask whether that was translatable into the new dispatch center? Could it be used there?
So that's the idea, that
Okay.
if we, right now, the CCPSA board is on a bit of a delayed timeline. So as we are getting more grant dollars, we think we can move more quickly. However, our dispatch consoles are at end of life now. So
Okay.
if we weren't going to regional dispatch, we wanted them built into the budget. But with those dollars built into the budget and regional dispatch moving, we can line up those two efforts, and that will be our contribution, our capital contribution to that effort in the future.
So can I ask you, is that the receipt of that grant, has that inspired some of the other communities who've been maybe dragging their feet or just kind of holding back?
It absolutely has, because that grant also must be spent by a time certain this calendar year.
Oh,
So it's not even a grant we can just sit on for a future allocation. We need to make that investment now if we're going to move as a board.
okay, great.
So very good news. I think most of you have seen the update that V-Trans did install the 30-mile-an-hour signs along Heinsberg Road. Finally, thank you to them for that. Last Tuesday, Andrew and I held a candidate informational session for the city council candidates, had great questions, great discussion, and are just so thankful that members of the community are interested in stepping up and serving and being very thoughtful about local government. And then just want to remind you that, of course, next meeting is the 22nd, which is Tuesday night, because Monday night is President's Day. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Tom, I'm sorry, I skipped over you. Did you have any comments to make or things to share?
I'll say one thing. So Friday night, I had the pleasure of doing a ride-along with the South Burlington Police Department, and it was the night of a lot of snow. So I'll say this, I never knew that snow was treated as a very calming effect in the community, and Officer Snow made for a very quiet night. So it was a pleasure to connect with SBPD, to see the city through their lens, and I encourage all councilors, do a ride-along with the cops if you can get around to it. I think it was a great experience, and I encourage others to do so as well.
Okay, and will you keep an eye on that $11 million for dispatch? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then to the consent agenda. We have 6 items. The disbursements, approving the 2022 Certificate of Highway Mileage submission to the state of Vermont. Approve, Stormwater grant request, the Lake Champlain Basin Program. Approve another stormwater grant application, Mark Design and Implementation Block Grant. Approve the 2021 TIF Annual Report. And approve a resolution and certificate along with related legal documents, a lot of legal documents, necessary for the Vermont Bond Bank to issue general obligation bonds in a total amount of $1.4 million, 43,000 of which, that's right, I'm sorry, 430,000 of which is to be serviced with a tax increment financing from the City Center TIF District. And this 1.4 million is for the construction of the South Burlington Public Library and City Hall as authorized by the ballot November 6, 2018.
So I'll move that we approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion or comments or questions?
So our mileage went up to 69.6, right? So that's just the raw mileage of the roads, but then you talked about lane miles, which is like, 2 or 4 or whatever, so that's why it was up in the 400s, right? Okay.
Right.
just
Yeah, that's
making
why,
observation.
yeah.
Right, or sometimes there's 3, we have that center lane a couple of places,
Yeah.
or turnoffs or
Whatever,
whatever.
I mean, it's a lot
Yeah,
of lanes.
it's a lot of
Lane miles,
mileage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta plow them, yeah.
Well, and the number reflected here is solely the class 3 highways. It's not
Oh, okay.
all of the municipal,
Not state highways.
not all of the municipal roads.
Okay, ready for the vote? Okay, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, that's sounds like, 5-0, and it's approved. So ordered. Okay, item 7, this is the opportunity for counselors and the public to share information and resources on climate change. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to share anything?
Thank you.
Well, I just have one little thing. And I know not all of you have read the Vermont Climate Action Plan. It's quite long. I know Matt has, and I've read probably half of it. And one of the things that I think I was struck by is the multiple times that it talks about needing to look at town development regulations in order to deal with climate change. And going through, there are just an enormous number of references to that very thing. Building resilience in communities, in the built environment. Changing recommendations to change Vermont's land use policies so current and future land development will be adaptive and resilient to climate change impacts. To promote healthy, connected river corridors, floodplains, and wetlands. There's too many to read. We'd end up reading the whole thing. But I just bring this up because their pathways and some of their strategies are really very much aligned with a lot of the work that has been completed for interim zoning and the LDR regulations and things that the Planning Commission continues to work on. And I also might add that the task force on climate change is certainly using this as a template. And I think it's very much aligned with some of the things that we all feel are important. And they've identified what looks like some local activities that the task force will be looking at in more depth. I think they agreed to specifically start to focus on kind of the built structures and how can we make them more efficient or work to combating climate change. So it's just, it seems that it's all coming together in a way that we will start the ball rolling with a vote later tonight on the LDRs, and then continue with our task force conversations and recommendations. But it was comforting in many ways to learn that we're not alone thinking that land use regulations can positively impact and support ways to make communities resilient and better fight the changes of climate, or at least get us more prepared.
Yeah. Since we have 15 minutes for
Yeah.
this item, I will just add that we are in the Winooski River Basin, and that will be a major flood zone. And I think that we're fortunate to have forecasts. And New York has forecasts. I can't imagine all the work that they will have to do in order to make New York City resilient and other coastal cities resilient. But just something that caught my eye, I've shared with people before. I grew up outside of Chicago. Could see the Sears Tower. I'll always call it the Sears Tower from one of our main streets. And they don't know. They don't know if they will be flooded out like they had this past spring, or if they will be in drought. And if they are in drought and the lake level declines, the Chicago River, which they engineered to go away from that lake, and very polluted river, will reverse its course and no engineering can overcome it and will pour into the lake, which is the drinking water for a city of 6 million people. So I think paying attention to our lake and to our drinking water source is something that this city has to very seriously consider in terms of our responsibilities to future generations. Yeah.
Interesting. Roseanne Greco would like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. And thank you again for making time on your city council agenda to talk about probably the most important problem and priority we have, which is the climate crisis. I heard Matt Cota say a few times about reading the Vermont initial climate action plan and how much great information was in there. So I read it. And I also was struck, I think Helen mentioned this, about how much is in there about how land and land conservation in particular and how we save our land can help us through the climate crisis. I want to draw your attention. There's so many references, as Helen said, it'd be great to summarize it in a paragraph or two, but you really can't. But one of the things they talk about in the pathways for sequestration and storage of carbon, which by the way, early on, they say that we are losing our carbon sinks, our trees. Vermont is losing our trees and the land that sequesters carbon. So we're going to be in a dire predicament. Even if we reduce our emissions, we will not have enough natural land to store the carbon. But what they talk about, which I think is critical to understanding and so much in alignment with what the city is doing in the Planning Commission with the land development regulation amendments on environmental protections, because it says Vermont's natural and working lands and waters are our greatest asset in mitigating the impacts of climate change. They say natural climate solutions, which they go into great deal about in section 13, are conservation, restoration, and improved land management actions that can increase carbon storage or avoid the greenhouse gas emissions in landscapes and wetlands across the globe. And there's so much more, but they talk about two sides of the coin, reducing emissions and saving the natural resources that store the carbon. So I think, thank you, Matt, for recommending the Vermont Climate Action Plan. It is full of information and it's really confirms the work that you're doing here to preserve our open lands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we can move on to, is it time? What time is it?
Yeah, we're after 7.
Okay.
I'm going to start recording, so we record the public hearing.
Okay, so the public hearing on the proposed amendments.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. And we now have people in the audience. I just want to note for Dawn, I talked all about our meeting. So you missed that conversation, but I did mention it. Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone. Tonight, we'll be holding our second public hearing on the proposed amendments to the land development regulations provided to us by the Planning Commission last fall. Prior to this evening, we've been provided the draft regulations, warned these public hearings, received a presentation from the Planning Commission and Planning Director, and received recommended clarifications from the city's legal counsel, in addition to a lot of submitted testimony. The purpose tonight is to hear from you. We won't be responding to individual comments except perhaps to ask a clarifying question to make sure we understand a commenter's point. We also won't be having a dialogue amongst ourselves. We will take all that we've learned tonight together. We will have a dialogue after the public hearing, but we'll take all the letters and emails that we've had time to digest and have a council discussion and hopefully a vote. Finally, I would like to thank the members of the Planning Commission and city committees who've put in countless hours into preparing this work, and to thank all the members of our community who've taken the time to review and provide feedback on these draft regulations in writing at prior meetings, and those of you who will speak tonight. Procedurally, we'll have comments from folks who are in person and folks attending remotely. If you're in person, please walk up to the podium and I'll call on you. For those attending remotely, please indicate that you would like to speak in the chat function, and our city manager, Jesse Baker, will keep a running tab of those wishing to speak. To be fair to everyone, I'll attempt to mix in both person and remote attendees. If you're participating remotely, turn on your mic and your video if you wish, when I call your name. I'd lastly like everyone to keep their comments brief and succinct. We'll use a timer, and I'd like them to be under 4 minutes, and try not to repeat comments made by others. And if there's time remaining after everyone who wants to speak has spoken, I will entertain a second comment if it's new information. So we need to open the public hearing with a motion to
So
enter
moved.
into.
Unless there's a formal one that you have. No,
No.
so moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing is taking place. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? All right, is there anyone at home? Oh, okay. Sandy, Dooley?
Just for clarification, this public hearing is about the small technical legal changes that were made in the wording from the last, is that correct?
That is very loud. My apologies. Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning. The notice was put out to put it as a second hearing.
Okay.
So while the changes that you made were the technical legal ones and the ones that you made on January 18th, the hearing advertises the full draft.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, you want to come up to the podium? Yes, when you get up there, sure.
Just make sure the light on the mic is on.
I submitted these comments, but late, so you probably haven't had a chance to read them. This is more about process. I think these regulations are really major, and having had experience in the legislature, as I know at least 3 of you have, the process there is different when something is really big and momentous. Big bills sometimes go through days, even months of testimony in committee. Sometimes they even go to second and third committees, and they have testimony from experts, and sometimes committees ask for consultant reports, as you have done. And the goal, of course, is a unanimous vote, but that doesn't always happen to send it to the floor. But when it's really big, the whole House wants to have a role, or the whole Senate, in really forming that legislation. And they debate, sometimes for days. And amendments are proposed, and sometimes they send them back to committee for assessment, and sometimes amendments are added. And I really think the importance of these rules are comparable because we're the second or third largest city. We're part of the big jobs and growth center, and the biggest in the state. And we really have a reputation of doing things thoughtfully and with a thorough consideration of their effects. So with all those things in mind, I really ask and really believe that these regulations should represent your integration and collective thinking about what the balance should be of development and conservation in the city for these will last a long time, I think. And I really haven't heard that. And I also add to that, it's not a timer going off, or is it? Oh, that I watched the process as much as I could, and my sense that they really need your examination and an open dialogue comes from the fact that many of the things in these rules came from a 4-3 vote. I know they were, they had a shotgun against their head. There was a deadline, 3 years, it was up. And certainly everybody wanted something as opposed to nothing. And so they all got together and voted 7-0 to send them to you. But that doesn't say that they are a consensus. And so what I'm really saying is I'd really like you to give them your imprint of your values and principles. And I haven't heard that. And I think there is some time for that. So that's pretty much what I have said here. I'm not asking you to seek more input, at least not from the public. If you want more expert or something consultation, that's of course your will and your decision. I just think they really deserve more from you. The only other thing is I attached how I just wanted to, as Helen knows, I've worked with her on regulations. I've had a lot of experience in that area. I took a look at the rules that would need to change for what the Affordable Housing Committee has proposed. And, with all due respect, the changes wouldn't be that bad. It's really what you want them to be. And these we have a housing crisis, and these would make, not that they would turn it upside down, but I've said many times we need a gigantic toolbox, and we need to go at the housing problem with every tool that we think will make a difference. And I must say, I do differ with Councilor Emery's view that they add. I think the addition involves a piece of land that's not in the southeast quadrant. I also think the numbers don't include the potential housing units that are lost by reducing the maximum number of units that can be occurred in those small lots of 5 acres or less from 4 to 1.8. I don't think those were considered. That's a lot of housing units, potential housing units that were taken off the map. So I do not think these rules expand housing opportunities. Quite the contrary. I believe they diminish them significantly. So thank you for all your work. But the Planning Commission did a lot, but we need more on these, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. John Burton is online, I think. Yeah. Hi, John.
Thanks for taking time for me to speak a bit tonight. You have in your packet the motion that the Economic Development Committee put together. From our perspective, we have concerns about whether this does expand or contract the number of housing units that we can put together as a city to impact the housing issues. And, we believe that permanently withdrawing land as an option down the road is probably an economic impact. And so we have proposed that a full economic study be done as opposed to the Earth Economics study, which, if you look at the authors of that report, had degrees in geography, environmental politics, and marine biology. They're not economists. And they were just looking at the non-market value of the ecosystem services. They weren't looking at things as taxation. They weren't looking at city services associated with additional housing units, comparing the old regulations to the new regulations. And we think that data needs to be on the table to make an informed, fiscally responsible decision for the community. So those are some of the thoughts that our committee had. And we think it makes sense, as Sandy was saying too, to pause enough to put in more consideration at the city council level, get additional data so that we're on firm footing, because these will be, I'm sure, long-lived regulations. So I'm here for questions if you have any.
Okay, we typically don't have the question and answer, but we'll discuss that. We as a council can discuss your proposal when we talk about what we hear tonight and what we've heard in the past. Unless, does anyone
Okay.
have some clarifying? Maybe I'll just ask one clarifying. Did you, we got the proposal. I was a little surprised that a committee went ahead to sort of ask for a contract from a consulting company. Typically, the city does that and does an RFP. And I was curious if the company understood that this was a dream or a hope of the Economic Development Committee rather than a bona fide request from the city of South Burlington.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We thought for you to make the most informed decision, you'd want to know about how long might it take to do a study and about how much it might cost. And we were quite clear with the consulting group that I happen to know, and actually Jesse Baker worked with them in Winooski. I know them through the Brattleboro Development Corporation because they did some economic studies for them. So I know they have a good reputation, and I contacted them saying this is not a bid. This is a rough estimate and a scope of work pending the city council taking any kind of action on this and probably doing an open bid process.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got it clarifying. Yes, would you come up to the mic, please? Tell us your name and ask your question, please.
My name is Andrew Werner. I was wondering what rules that you're sure are long lasting.
Pardon me?
He said there are some rules that he is sure are long lasting, and I was wondering what rules those were.
Oh, we're talking about the LDRs.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's my first city council meeting. It's my first city council meeting.
Uh-huh.
So I was curious as to what exactly is being discussed.
We're specifically looking at the land use development regulations that are being proposed for the Southeast Quadrant.
Yeah, I didn't know if he could tell me what rules that he was sure were long lasting. He said that.
Yeah, I would say the entire set of regulations isn't frequently updated. So
Infrequently?
it's likely that it's infrequently updated. So I would believe that these would be in place for some time.
So
Okay, if that's your question, I think it was answered.
he didn't answer the question.
This is an opportunity for you to tell us. This is another witness. So this isn't a dialogue between people giving testimony here.
I was
You're welcome to
curious.
make a comment. You have 4 minutes to make a comment about what your feelings are, what your opinion is of the land development regulations.
I've emailed each of
But the
you.
back and forth
I got no
between another
response.
witness is not what we're looking for tonight.
And our
Okay.
chair is the one who presides over this meeting as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else? Okay, Monica? Thank you, John.
Hello, I'm speaking as a resident who happened to attend every planning commission meeting, so I'm trying to separate the two there. I also happen to sit in every affordable housing committee meeting, and I happen to agree with pretty much everything Sandy Dooley ever has to say. That said, I very much support the city council approving this package tonight as a whole. It is a web, complicated web that is interlocked and heavily reliant on interconnectedness within. It's taken 3 years to put this together. And once approved, if it is tonight, there are definitely improvements that have to continue to be discussed. COVID was no help in the middle of this process. The work that was done to add an additional nearly 1,000 acres to protected lands within Article 12 of critical natural resources is something we should all be very proud of. And when I drove past massive areas of trees in South Burlington and thought back to the regulation appropriate clear cutting that happened on Kennedy Drive years ago that harmed a lot of our hearts, I was very happy to know that these new regulations would put different allowables in place. So we won't see that, especially in this beautiful winter when we can see these beautiful masses of trees that these regulations will protect. But that as soon as, and if approved, absolutely having strong discussions about priorities of things that need to continue to be evolved, which is what the Planning Commission does all the time. And I'm saying that as a member of the city who recognizes what the job of the Planning Commission is. Everything always evolves, and there's a lot that has to evolve. What we've heard already needs to continue to be discussed. But I absolutely support approving this big bundle that you have received, and I hope that you do so tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean Chalot, he's online.
Yes, he is. Can you hear
Are
me?
we going to see you?
Yeah, maybe. My camera turns on. Hello?
Well, we can hear you. We can't see you
you can
yet.
hear me. Okay.
There we go.
All right. Well, there we go. Hello. So I'm Jean Cholot. I'm the chair of a Natural Resources Conservation Committee in South Burlington. I'm here to support the land use and development regulation that come in front of you today as a base, as a very strong base, like the land is the base. I think this set of regulation really defines something that is the ground, no pun intended, of everything else for the long term, because I think we are living for the long term, and short-term development might have conflicting interests with the long-term interest of South Burlington and of the world if we go of a bigger picture with climate change right now. That say, I think those intricate, like Monica said, and complex regulation will be altered in the future to some extent, but this is certainly a base that I'd like to really put in place before we move to something maybe more refined, even though it's already really well designed, but like having to make sure that everything is done in a very impartial and objective way when it comes to reviewing the development and their alterations to make sure flexibility is there, but also objectivity. That's why the NRCC has recommended to have an independent review of encroachment and deviation from those ODRs. I hope that's something that can come in the future. And really that's core of what I wanted to say is to put in place this important base for our land and then build up from there. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeff Nick, before you get up there, how's your daughter doing?
She's doing well.
Oh, good. Did you know her? Yeah, she's in the Olympics.
Oh,
Woohoo. Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
It is, and it's very exciting being Megan Nick's dad and mom, that's for sure. So,
We'll give her our best.
it's okay. She competes on Sunday, next Sunday.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we're a partner in the Heinsberg Road land that we call the Hill Farm. We still have some major concerns with these LDRs that are proposed. We still have undefined, the commercial uses have been undefined for us yet, and yet your city plan does call for them, some type of commercial uses, but yet we have not yet landed on those after 3 years. The mapping is somewhat confusing for us. There's this map here, and it talks about newly regulated outside the SEQ conserved areas. And then we talk about level 1 habitat blocks, and there's a shaded area here. I thought we were talking about habitat blocks the whole time, and now we're talking about conserved areas. So I'm confused by maybe I missed it in all these meetings, but the terminology seemed to have shifted a little bit, at least as far as we're concerned. There's an extra 3 acres of a hayfield that's not related to the wooded area. The school land adjacent to us follows the wood line. On our property, for some reason, it doesn't follow the woods line. So I don't think we're being treated fairly if this becomes a document that everybody's using. And is the school district, are they aware that they're losing all the development potential on their land? I don't know how, you never put a school there with this new designation.
Well, I don't think the school owns it, just to clarify. It's city land. They've looked at it as a school and turned it down, as I understand, when they were proposing a new elementary school. They said that wasn't large enough.
Okay, I always thought they, at some point, had a school idea there. But anyway,
Well, I think they did, and then they looked at it with that design, it didn't work.
yeah. So the habitat block, as it's always been defined here, is 45 acres of our land. Using the wetland buffer delineation is between 16 and 22 acres of our land. So it's a significant amount of land that you're poised to take. And, I'm hearing different references to conserving open space now and carbon sequestration and, then reducing emissions. I don't know, is this a mission creep? Have we gone from habitat block to all of a sudden needing it for other reasons? I'm really baffled by, if you want to reduce emissions, you've got a parcel of land that's close to city services, already served by all the infrastructure. If you want to have a good place for housing, you can ask for a better place for housing. And, to long term, you're talking 20 years, you've got all of this growth that's planned. Regional planning calls for 2% growth, and you're going to really force people to drive longer distances. So it's confusing to me. On one goal, you want to reduce emissions from automobiles. On the other hand, you don't want housing close to all the infrastructure. And I did a little research about, is this actually habitat? We hired our own habitat expert, and they've consulted with us and said, no, it's not critical habitat. You've got walking trails and a lot of dogs on those trails in Wheeler Park, and they come right across our land. Our land is really an extension of Wheeler Park. And if you Google walking trails, dogs, and habitat, they're not compatible. So you really, it's not a habitat area, which is, for the last 3 years, we've been talking about habitat and arguing about what's critical habitat. But if you do a little research and dig a little bit, it doesn't appear, based on its location with a highway and rooftops and a park and walking trails and a lot of dogs, it's not really habitat. So I'm wondering if this isn't an attempt to, have an extension of Wheeler Park on our land without really telling us. At least that's what it feels like. It really does. So if you want housing close to your infrastructure, you want to reduce emissions, this is the place for it. And, we're willing to sit down and talk about it and try to negotiate something, but it doesn't feel like, this has been all negotiated or not negotiated, but in good faith moving forward. It just doesn't feel right for us. And we can, we've been consulting with our lawyers. I don't want to make this a legal thing, but it appears that that's where we're headed. So we'd rather not, but that appears where we're headed. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Helen,
Yes,
can we just,
you can ask a clarifying question.
yeah, are you aware that the proposed zoning change of the parcel that you're discussing would allow between 300 and 500 homes?
I wouldn't say 500, but I do know, well, it's 300 on the whole thing, but if you put commercial on the front, which is what your city plan calls for, you're not going to get 300 or 350 homes. You'll get a lot less.
But how much was it zoned for previous to these draft regulations in terms of housing?
It wasn't zoned for housing.
Zero housing.
Yes.
So these regulations would provide for at least 300 units possibly of housing?
Well, at the expense of what we could have done, which is industrial land. And
But IO is not housing, right?
it's not zoned for housing, no, that's right.
Right, so, but now it is.
Well, we
Housing is
came-
in commercial, right?
We came to the, right here, or not, but Rich, your old room, and we presented a plan that showed a mixed-use development. And it says, right, I've read this before in the minutes, it says it was well-received, and we've shown that plan a number of times. It has commercial, not retail commercial, but, job creation, growth, that type of development on the front, and housing towards the back, and a mixed zone in between. So you have some nice mixed-use housing, you have higher density housing, and then you get lower density housing. You go down towards at the bottom of the hill. That seemed to work for the Dawson Park people. They liked what they saw. The planning commission at the time liked what they saw. It's in the minutes. But yet here we are 5 years later, and we have no commercial development in the regs right now. We did get some housing, but
And neighborhood commercial. It's both,
it's very limited commercial. Yeah.
well,
So
It's
it's
in the
not,
eye of the
it's not
beholder.
job creation development, which is what the city also needs. There's although people think that there's a lot of green space out there that's ready for job growth, there's not. And the prices for industrial land is through the roof. It's crazy. So there's a lack of good land for job creation. There's a lack of good land for housing. But you're talking about 20 extra acres. That's a lot of housing. And it's not wildlife habitat. That I'm quite sure of. So it's something else. And I think seems like a mission creep going on about other goals for this land. And so
Okay,
that's how we feel.
thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Mittag?
Thank you, Chair Freely. We've heard already this evening that the draft LDRs don't really represent a consensus of the Planning Commission. I'd like to make it known that there were many motions voted on and straw polls taken, and there was not unanimity on all of those. But all of them involved robust discussion and debate. And in the final analysis, all commissioners felt that we had a good product that they could all support. And that does represent consensus, clear consensus. I'd like to make two other small points. Neither Jeff Nick nor Jim Burton used the word climate change mitigation one single time in their presentation, which should indicate to the council where their thinking is. Thank you.
Okay. Mike Semino?
Good evening, and thank you for hearing me. I want to channel Simon and Garfunkel a little bit and just kind of say that you should slow down. You move too fast. So, a couple of thoughts. It's a rare occasion when there's a lot of conversation about significant issues, and people on either side of those issues cannot trot out their own specialists, do their own studies, and attempt to drown one another out with the details of what they've come up with. So I don't want to get into debating the studies that have been done, but I will say that there were two studies that fit the narrative that have been embraced very consistently. And there were two other studies that were done that seem to be swimming upstream to the narrative that have been robustly discounted and may not have even been read by all of the people who sit on this council. So the counter-narrative studies seem not to have been attached with as much credibility and taken as seriously. The next point that I want to make is that there has been a lot of hard work done on these proposed regulations, and the odds are pretty good that the bulk of that work product is good and will serve our community well. But I think there are also some things that people have a lot of concern about, and these just aren't a few people. You've got your own economic development committee, and I know, I've seen a little bit of chatter about whether the thinking was accurate or not, or might, be determined to be false. Let's just say, again, that maybe there's a difference of opinion on the data that's being passed back and forth there. But your own city economic development committee comes up with a statement, and it's being given very little consideration. Your own Affordable Housing Committee, the entity who for years has met and attempted to try to come up with some changes that are going to accelerate the creation, not just of affordable housing, but to improve housing affordability. And I don't think the term housing affordability gets used enough. We know there's an affordable housing problem, but there is a housing affordability problem that is throughout our market, throughout our region, and for that matter, throughout our country. And the biggest response to that crisis is an increase in inventory. If you read the articles and you read the literature, it's supply and demand, and we need more supply. Finally, your South Burlington Business Association has come out and expressed having great concerns about some of the proposed changes. The SBBA is made up of approximately 100 businesses, and the majority of these businesses are small to moderate-sized businesses who are either owned by the operators or they employ a lot of local people, not just in South Burlington, but outside of the area. But the capacity of these businesses to be sustainable hinges a great deal on the affordability of housing in this area. So given that, these aren't folks who are looking to kind of win a battle. They're not ideologues. They're people that are just looking for equity and sustainability in the lives that they live. And I think that it would be reasonable for you to slow down and take a little bit more time thinking about some of these things.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for Michael.
Yes.
All right. Last time I asked a member of the SBBA board when they issued a statement whether or not the members had voted on that statement. The answer was no. Why should they have? I've been in communication with members of the SBBA who do not agree with the SBBA statement. So my question to you is, did the members vote on that statement?
So the board of directors of the South Burlington Business Association did vote. And I'm forgetting exactly what the outcome, what it said. I don't have the piece of paper in front of me. So the board did vote and express concerns.
People on that board, Michael?
They're 15 to 18. It's a pretty good-sized board.
And how many small businesses did you mention?
Well, there are approximately 100. So we didn't go around and do a head count. And you know as well as I do, on a good day, if you solicit your membership of any organization, what kind of percent are you going to get that's going to respond? People would fall all over themselves if you got 50% to respond. But I have no doubt that we're a good-sized organization. There's diversity in our organization, and I'm certain that there are a number of people in our organization that are on board with these LDR changes. But our board felt that there were concerns that merited further study, and that's basically what we attempted to communicate to the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Noah Hyman? Good evening.
Hello. Hi, good evening. I'd like to just share a couple of things real quick off the top of my head. The SSBA is a very small organization. As a small business owner and a medium business owner, I know many people that just don't even bother to join that group. A couple other things I'd like to say. I keep hearing that we're in a housing shortage in South Burlington. We're in an affordable housing shortage in South Burlington. We are in a housing shortage nationwide. I was recently in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Fort Lauderdale, Florida, West Palm Beach, and Atlanta, Georgia, and there's a housing shortage everywhere. It has nothing to do with South Burlington. It has nothing to do with our laws, our codes, and what we're trying to do. We are running out of land, and we are destroying the environment, period. End of statement. It's inarguable, and every single scientist agrees with that fact, period, end of statement. It's very hard for me to hear that people are still arguing that affordable housing or the business community, it's a bona fide fact that this planet is being wrecked. Period. There's no argument to that. That's not come up in this entire discussion. Please focus on the facts of where we are. We can't solve the country's problems, and we can only help what we can help. We can save some space for ourselves, for our children, for our friends, for our family, and the fact that the rest of the country and the rest of Vermont, we're all facing the same problems: lack of materials, lack of housing, lack of affordable housing, lack of jobs, we can't fix that here. This is about this one thing, and I please pray that you will all vote to conserve some land. I wish it could be another way. I wish there was a way to do it where I could build whatever I wanted to build one day. But all we have is this. And if this doesn't work, then we're back to the wild, wild west. Please vote for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, did you want to make a comment on the LDRs?
Question. That guy said, vote for this. So what was the vote, if there's any vote?
We're talking about accepting or not accepting the land use regulations. That's the vote we're talking about. It hasn't changed from the last time I told you that. Okay, so.
It's my first city council meeting.
Could the speaker use the microphone for the people at home? We can't hear.
And I'm not sure exactly what's happening, so it's my first time.
Okay, well,
I was gonna get the minutes later, too, and then there's like a real vote going on, so I just wanted to ask, what exactly it was.
well, the vote, if we take one, will be on the land use regulations. Okay, thank you. The next person is Chris Jensen. And there also was another person online who said they wanted to speak, but neither Jesse nor I caught their name. So if you could put your name in the chat, we can call on you. But for now, it's Chris Jensen. Hi there.
We can't hear you, Chris.
We can't hear you. You're on mute. It's
Dahlstrom.
Chris, we can't hear you. Your little microphone needs to turn green. Nope, at the bottom of the screen, if you tap it, it should come up, or to the left.
Sometimes you just need to connect your computer audio.
I think she's spoken before, though.
Yeah, she has.
Oh, now we might, there's been a change. Oh,
Okay, you just had it
almost.
green, now it's red again. Now it's
There.
green. See if you can
Am I
speak.
back?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wonder. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I have done this before and I thought it worked. So I apologize, and I won't take up a lot of your time. But I work with the Larkins. We represent them. I'm a lawyer in Burlington, and they own a couple of parcels that are going to be significantly potentially impacted by the proposed LDRs. I recognize a lot of work by a lot of people has been done on this project. And it is, I think, impossible for me to actually identify specifically how they will apply to my clients' parcels. But I want to add my voice to those who are concerned about the foundation on which the proposed regulations rest. I started following the process during the Open Space Committee meetings, and I was concerned back then, and I actually remain concerned that what we are doing here is starting out with a result, which is to prevent development on a few selected large parcels of land in particular. And we have sort of bootstrapped a way to get there. I have concerns about the legitimate basis of the foundation for the regulations, like the Arrowwood study. For example, the habitat blocks, then someone earlier spoke about mission creep, the habitat blocks expanded to buffers. And I'm not sure that this is a rational basis for regulation. So I would encourage you to really consider whether the proposed regulations are rationally based and are actually going to achieve the stated goal that some have proffered, which is to prevent climate change, promote open space. I would suggest to you that South Burlington is a city in in Vermont's most populous county. And this is the place where development should occur. So I would really encourage you to consider the basis for the proposed land development regulations. Don't rush this process. This is important. Thank you for your time, and I will sign off now.
Thank you. Rick Dahlstrom? I'm hope I'm not. Did I pronounce that correctly? Dahlstrom?
Your microphone appears to be on.
Yeah.
Is he talking?
Rick, your microphone looks like it's on, but we can't hear you. Now we heard him. Oh.
It's connecting maybe to your computer audio. Yeah, if you go under settings.
Well, we could move, Rick, we can come back to you when you figure it out. Is that
I
okay?
can text Rick.
Oh,
There we go.
Rick, I'll call him right now.
did you just say something? Would you please be quiet, Mr. Vermer? Because I'd like to hear him. Yeah, would you please be quiet? Because your voice makes it hard for me to figure out if our speaker is connected. Thank you.
We
No,
did.
I don't think he is.
Yeah.
Well, I can't tell if.
I'll message him. I'll message him.
Okay, thank you.
You can also use a telephone, right?
Yes, you could. Why don't we move on to Barb's service? And we'll get,
I just talked to Rick. He's trying to connect. Can you give him one more minute, please?
oh, who said that?
He's my next door neighbor.
Noah, oh, okay.
Okay, he's trying to connect right now.
Okay, thank you, Noah. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Okay, thank you.
He's going to restart his computer and then come back. If you could get him back in line.
Okay, why don't we move on then? Thank you, Noah. Why don't we move on to Barb's service, and then we'll come back to Rick when he gets back online. Hello, Barb.
Hi, Helen. Thank you. I did not intend to speak tonight. I came just to listen, but I heard a number of things that gave me pause. And one is the whole discussion about we haven't given this enough time. Last I heard, we've been talking about this for about 3 years. I am impressed by the fact that the Planning Commission didn't always agree, but they came up with a document that they did agree that could come to the City Council. And I think that we could talk about this forever, and we could each find a study that supports our position. And none of these things, while they are going to be permanent, they are not going to be in stone, and there would be room for change. But we need to do something that moves us forward. I don't live in the Southeast Quadrant, but many of you know that I am a fairly long distance walker, and it's the only place in my town where I can go and find a little bit of outdoors. And the other thing that I keep hearing people talk about affordable housing. And when someone mentioned what happened on Kennedy Drive, I am equally concerned that this will happen again and that we will see the same thing happen, which is we're not going to see affordable housing built there. We're going to see homes that start at $500,000. We're not going to see the wonderful work of Habitat happening in that particular area. So I think there is a disparity there between talking about the development and talking about affordable housing. So I would suggest that we move forward with these proposals, that we allow for the fact that there will be probably some changes in the future. But if we don't move forward and do something, we haven't talked about climate change. We haven't talked about real affordability of housing. And we need to have those conversations, and they need to be prevalent. But let's move forward with these and then continue to have those conversations that are important to the future of our community. And we do not have to provide housing for everyone. We also need to provide that open space that allows people a place where they can play, where they can find some serenity, where they can walk their dog, where they can take their kids and their grandkids, or they can just walk by themselves to find something that isn't $500,000 homes. So I would hope that you will pass these regulations, recognizing the fact that there will be change in the future, but let's move forward and have some progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. So Rick Dahlstrom. Let's see if Rick is back on.
We still can't
Rick, we
hear
still
you.
can't hear you.
You could call, what's the phone number? You could keep your camera on and call the phone number. I have it here. If you have your phone, Rick. Are you ready? All right, it's 1-872-240-3212. And then when it asks for the access code, just look at the screen and I'll give it to you.
Okay. Do we want to, Chris Trump,
Megan, can you read the number one more time?
Yes,
in the chat?
it's 1-872-240-3212. And once you get a voice that will prompt you for the access code, and the access code is 342-108-109.
is he, do you think he's dialing?
I don't know. I don't know that he is. That one is if you want to address the council.
I was curious what's going on now.
We're waiting for someone who wants to speak to us.
Who are you waiting for?
This gentleman that you see on the screen here, he's having difficulty with his microphone.
Oh, here's, have you heard of South Burlington Police Chief Sean Burke?
That's not on topic, so we're not going to talk
Oh.
about the police department. This is a public hearing on the LDR, so if you would kindly take a seat, I would appreciate that.
Sir, if you're interested in our process and city council meetings and what we're talking about, my name's Jessie. I'm the city manager. You can email me anytime. I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you about this process and how you can learn about it and how you can contribute in the future.
Sweet, awesome. This is my first city council meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's like, I was kind of confused. It seemed like everything was on hold. And it's like, it seemed like, CYB kind of moving away. And so,
Yeah, let me come give you my email address and you can call me or email me and come in and meet with me and learn about the process. How about that?
yes,
Okay.
I will definitely call you.
I'm gonna go do that.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Nice. So it's like, I just feel kind of move forward and it's like, see pause. I know it's this mic.
Yep, why don't you get,
So why don't you come with me and I'll give you my email address?
I'll come back, but I keep listening when you're going outside.
So they can keep hearing the testimony that people are giving.
so is Rick connected yet? No?
Rick, do you have your phone on?
Oh, caller, yeah.
He has his phone. Okay. Okay, here's the number, Rick. Call this number, okay? 1-872-240-3212. I'll repeat, that's 1-872-240-3212.
I'm a caller. Can I speak?
Well, why don't we,
We're right in the middle here.
can you just give me
And
your
then-
name
and then Rick,
and I'll get
okay,
back to you.
The access code, ready? Yes. 342-108-109. So that's 9 numbers. 342-108-109.
I'm another caller, and my name is Ray Gonda, and I would like to speak.
Okay, Gonda, excuse me, Ray, we've got Chris Tremblay before you. Hopefully, we're going to get Rick on.
Okay, I'm on my phone.
Rick, great. I think that's Rick.
Yeah.
No, that's Ray, isn't
Yes.
it?
It's Rick.
Yes, I'm on my phone.
Okay. So Rick,
I
welcome.
apologize.
This
I
took
don't
a
know why
while.
my computer microphone doesn't work.
Okay, so what do you have to share with us?
Okay, I had I earlier said that I had talked at the last meeting and I presented my case. I haven't seen any changes, so I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I just wanted to add that, again, you were trying to make about 95% of my property into NRP, which is a little bit of an overreach, I think. And I just wanted to say that according to the Constitution, and specifically the Fifth Amendment, there's a takings clause that the government shall not provide, shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And also property taken through regulation, which is what this NRP is the same as property taken through physical seizure. That's called a regulatory taking. Property is the foundation of every right we have, including the right to be free. America's founders understood clearly that private property is the foundation not only of prosperity, but of freedom itself. Thus, through the common law, state law, and the Constitution, they protected property rights, the rights of people to acquire, use, and dispose of property. And also, when government acts not to secure rights, but to provide the public with goods like wildlife, habitat, scenic views, or historic preservation, and in so doing prohibits or takes some otherwise rightful use, then it is acting, in part, under the eminent domain power and has to compensate the owner for any losses. The principle here is quite simple. The public has to pay for the goods it wants, just like any private person would have to. And that's all I have. That I've presented my case, and hopefully that you can. I don't think it's a thumbs up or thumbs down for the LDR. Generally speaking, the LDR is good, but it has some really serious flaws, and I hope you can adjust those flaws. Thanks for taking the time to listen and putting up with my microphone use. And you have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. I think next on the list is Chris Tremblay, followed by Ray Gonda.
Hi,
Chris.
Helen. Thank you. A statement that'll always stay with me for a long time. And I talk to folks about housing from all different perspectives, and just the one that really stays with me is I don't see homes being built for people like me. And it weighs heavy. We've received public comment through the duration of these conversations, and I think it's fair to have our elected representatives on the city council to give this some more air. It's a fair conversation to talk about the kind of city we're building and for who. These are a long time in process, but there were concerns that have gone unanswered. I'm not asking that we postpone the implementation beyond IZ, but I think there's an opportunity where we can respond to those concerns and, is this the right move? So thank you. And that's the end of my statement. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, Ray Gonda. And Ray, I think, is just on the phone.
Oh, Ray, if you're on the phone, I may have muted you. So I think you press *6 to unmute. I think it's *6. You would remember.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry about
Okay, good. I can see you guys on the internet, so I signed on, but apparently I need to be admitted. I'm guessing, and I haven't been admitted, but nonetheless, that's not important. My testimony is going to be pretty straightforward, and it's a response to the things that I've been told that Nick said tonight. I have read his environmental consultant's report on the wildlife there. And it essentially says that's not wildlife habitat, and so I'm sure that's what Mr. Nick is depending on. Several of us went down there about over 3 or 4 days during the early part of the snow season here, just beginning of January. Every day we were there, we found the kinds of predator tracks: fox, coyote, fisher, and a deer carcass. We found those tracks and we photographed them. I have written a 900-word commentary that didn't make it into this past week's top, and I'm hoping it will make it into this coming top in print. But it lays out and shows some photographs of what we took. But I have many more photographs than that, proving that that area is wildlife habitat. There is plenty of prey there: rabbits, squirrels, turkeys. There's no reason predators would not go there. We have the proof. Furthermore, I made an appeal on Front Porch Forum for people who may have seen wildlife there, and I got 8 responses. And all of those responses indicate exactly what I'm telling you now. So that's all I have to say, except I hope you support establishing these LDRs at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any other people who wish to comment, so I would entertain a motion. Oh, Sandy. I'm sorry, I forgot you wanted to do a follow-up.
Just 2 things. Whether you vote now, this evening, or later, I expect even if you explore some more changes, so that you wouldn't be able to explore all of the things that have been raised in public comments before the end of interim zoning. So I really believe the citizens need guidance, or the residents and the planning commission, on which of the concerns that have been raised resonate with you. Especially, I think the Affordable Housing Committee would like to know if none of those changes get incorporated in the short term, are they done on arrival, or are there changes that the Affordable Housing Committee has proposed that you want the Planning Commission to revisit? I would say they didn't get full consideration because of the compressed time frame. I looked at the calendar, and there were numerous, I forget how many, listening sessions on Article 12. There was nothing comparable to that regarding the changes outside of Article 12 with regard to the PUDs and the things the Affordable Housing submitted. So it wasn't a comparable process. And so I think time was a real consideration in how much the Affordable Housing Committee was able to give to, the Planning Commission was able to give to the Affordable Housing Committee's proposals. So what fixes are needed in your minds, and what's the priority for them? Where are we? As I said, are our recommendations dead, or are they live? Or are some of them dead and some of them live? My only other comment is I think it's fairly common for boards to speak for organizations. I happen to be a long-standing member of the South Burlington Land Trust. I do not always agree with their positions, but the board, Sarah and the board, speak for the organization. I am a member of many organizations, and except for the things that in the bylaws require consultation with the members, it's pretty common practice for boards to speak for organizations. So I just wanted to make that clarity. So if the councilors want the South Burlington Land Trust to poll the members on their positions, if they want the South Burlington Business Association to poll their members, they should also ask the South Burlington Land Trust and any other organization that presents positions to poll their members. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. So if there's nobody else, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, I want to thank everyone. I appreciate your coming out again. I appreciate and have read all of your comments, and they have become certainly part of the record and the thinking, at least I've given to this topic, and I appreciate them wholeheartedly. We'll move on to item 9, which is a discussion and possible action to adopt the proposed amendments to the land development regulations.
Helen, I would like to move that we adopt the proposed amendments to the land development regulations.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, is there further discussion?
Yes, I'm happy to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul looked poised
sure,
to say
please.
something, but I
Yes.
don't know. Do you need, no, you're just. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry. Tom?
So process question, I'm going to say to Sandy Dooley's points, which I think are quite valid, this might be posed mostly to you, Paul. I understand that we have an obligation to wrap this up by, I want to say April 6th, if you could confirm that date when I finish the question. I was wondering, to Sandy's point, where I agree, we need more time and we should address some of those 22 issues that Councilor Cota raised at the last one. I wonder if the sequence of a possible process where we could have more council discussion and articulation of our priorities and thinking about where our values intersect with some of these rules. Could this, in fact, these regulations be voted on by this council, not tonight, but before April 6th in conformance with IZ, and during that time, having another special meeting or two where we could, as a council, look at, for example, I love what Sandy Dooley sent out this afternoon. These are 6 very modest changes, which really went back and forth, or actually, I'm sorry, I don't think they were considered that much by the Planning Commission, but we could have, as a council, a meeting to discuss those 6 items and then set forth a separate regulation, a separate land development regulation outside of this during this time window before we approve this big block, where we could, without playing games and keeping these rules, we could warn changes addressing the Affordable Housing Committee's concerns, as well as others. I love what John proposed from the Economic Development Committee. That could be going in tangent as well. But if anything, we are not forced to take action tonight. We have till April 6th on this comprehensive list. And I think during that time, this council could charge, for example, new LDRs to adjust exactly as Sandy proposed, reforming and revising the conservation PUD requirement, changing the 70% to 50%, addressing some very valid concerns that we've heard very thoughtful testimony on, that it would be possible to, during this time, craft those LDRs, rewarn them so that they would still take effect separate from this. Paul, I don't know if that question makes any sense, but if you could confirm the date and ask if there is a path where we could approve this bundle, while during that time, until that date, develop an alternative, another set of changes that would effectively revise some small tweaks to this total bundle that would go into effect when we vote on it at some point before the April 6th date.
So there's 2 questions in there, Councillor Chittenden. The first question is timeline. So you are correct that the draft regulations are in effect pending council's action until, I believe it's April 6th. It might be April 7th. It's right around there. The City Council has the authority to act on the rules after that. However, if it does not act by April 6th, any applications received during this time would revert to being reviewed under the old presently adopted regulations, so that the quote unquote protection afforded by warning the hearing would expire at that point. To your second question, procedurally, I'm not sure I completely understood. The council has the authority to make changes that it elects to these draft regulations. If it makes changes, it needs to warn a new public hearing. It would have a vote to adopt whatever it ultimately is chooses to do. If it adopted the regulations, let's say as presented, and then decided to make changes, that would have to go back to the planning commission, to the beginning at the planning commission, because the council's action would have been to adopt the rules. However, if you were to say, I want to change page 16 to say something different, and not adopt the regulations in the meantime, so you're just making a change, that's fully within the council's authority. Does that make sense? So procedurally, it's the question of whether you adopt what's in front of you first or not.
Can I just ask you, Paul, my understanding is that the Planning Commission has continued to work on many of the issues that have been raised, including some of the other work that interim zoning has requested. For example, we had hoped that all of the PUDs could have been completed, but we ran out of time. So you're working on some of those now, as I understand it.
Yes, the chair, Jessica Luisos, is here as well virtually, but the Planning Commission is presently working on creating what they're calling a general PUD. This would apply in all the parts of the city that don't have the ability to have one of these new PUD types, and also to address some concerns and comments that were raised about how does one change an existing PUD. They decided to prioritize that and have expressed strong interest in having it in your hands early this spring. So that's their first priority, and then of course there's many other projects afterwards. They did not specifically take up the list that was considered at your meeting a couple of meetings ago that I believe Councilor Cota put forward, only because the vote was not to give it to them instantly. So I think at such time that the council expressed interest in them looking at those subjects, they would more than happily do it, but they didn't want to confuse the process of taking up items that were not given to them.
And just so I understand that, those, this generalized PUD and some of the other topics you're working on, certainly, well, I'm asking, could they also include the development of affordable housing? I mean, I think everyone has focused on, it almost sounds like the only place you can build affordable housing is in the southeast quadrant. And it seems to me we have many other spots, places, infill, redevelopment, outside. In fact, you included the Hill property, which is not in the southeast quadrant, but there are other properties, probably not that big, but where affordable housing could be built.
I think that I might, Jessica, if you're online, I might put that question to you as our policymaker, but I'm also happy to answer the question, but I think maybe I give first crack at that to Jessica if she's on.
She's on.
Yeah,
I don't,
point.
Tom, go ahead.
Wrap up that thread. I promise not to talk long. I just wanted clarity, because if we make changes at this stage, it requires another public hearing. So if we waited till April 6th, that would give time for this council or the planning commission to work through some additional changes, which would be queued up and be taking effect shortly after. With that, I'll stop. Thank you for letting me ask that question.
So Jessica?
Paul, do you want to address that question of the public hearing?
So the council could choose to have to make changes, or to ask the planning commission to make changes, or to ask any other group to make changes between now and April 6th. Ultimately, or after that. Ultimately, you as the council would need to say, these are the changes we are putting to a new public hearing. You would hold your new public hearing, and then you'd have the option to take action on them after that hearing.
And potentially, if there are two new council members, they would be forced in April to vote on, I don't know how many pages it is,
Over
of
530.
LDRs, and hopefully would understand them, unlike the five of us who've been working on this for 3 years. Or some of us, not all. Okay.
I just want to respond to this notion that the council should come to a consensus. We have a committee structure in our local government, and just like Sandy said, there are boards where the board of directors simply speaks for the hundreds of members. My point was that you should not speak for those hundreds of members, you should speak for the board. Here, we have a process where we had 7-member board, a commission that is also got a fiduciary responsibility to the city, that also has our planner and our attorneys working for them. They have consultants. And they have come forward after 3 years of tough discussion, negotiation, deliberation, looking at things. I've sat in on enough meetings to know that we have chosen the best people to do this job. And my gratitude runs deep. They were not political. They didn't know whose parcel. They didn't want to think about whose parcel the parcels belonged to. They were simply looking at this from a planning perspective. And in my view, that is the best process. And I will defend that process. I have read all 534 plus pages. And I believe, sitting through several discussions and explanations of them, that they have reached that balance. They have not downzoned the southeast quadrant. They have made more compact settlement possible so that we can conserve very significant natural resources that will help us address the flooding that we know is coming our way, that will help us address our crisis in the lake and pollution, and we can't even go swimming in the summer sometimes. And this is Vermont, pristine Vermont, and more. We know that the cost of food is going to go up by 30% by 2030. Wouldn't it be nice to have some lands that in the traditional neighborhood development or in the conservation PUD, they could farm and have those gardens, those public gardens for them so that they have fruits and vegetables. I find that the care that has been given to both the housing crisis and the climate crisis has been immense. They had a planning commission member who spoke here tonight who was dedicated to the affordable housing question. And I know this member. She is an excellent member. You were well served. Your questions were reviewed. Now, to answer the questions with regard to what I would accept and what I would not accept of Sandy's notes here and the Affordable Housing Committee's notes, I would like to look at the parcels less than 4 acres. I do believe that with the housing crisis and the climate crisis, we need to build more small, energy-efficient homes. We need to use that land more efficiently, just like these land development regulations are promoting. Now, with regard to the conservation PUDs, they were determined because there are at least 50% of those parcels that contain natural resources. We received information stating that the 30-70 split was based on the fact that the same number of homes would be built if it were 50-50 as it would be under 70-30. It's just that the homes will be more compact on that 30% of the parcel, and the 70% would allow for the habitat. And that's where we get to our lake, we get to our impaired streams, we get to our ecosystems, right? As Declan McCabe in one of the letters that we received said, let's not be a raccoon and rat town. Let's be Let's be a bobcat and fisher town. That's a healthy ecosystem. A thriving ecosystem is the term that my daughter's learning about. Now, I also want to get to this Vermont Climate Action Plan. This document is completely in line with the notion that we should promote compact settlements in order to reduce fragmentation of our natural resources. This plan in no way prevents us from developing affordable housing. We have heard here tonight, and something that members of the Affordable Housing Committee looked into as well, that Habitat for Humanity is willing to work with us as a partner, where they could invest in land and provide the materials and to sell homes for $125,000 to new homeowners who can build equity and enter into our market, and then turn around and do it again and again and again, simply by us providing that initial investment through our ARPA funds. I want to go in that direction. That is the way that I see in terms of bringing affordable housing to every part of this city. And as far as going above and beyond what is our current build out, and that's where the Planning Commission is now turning, looking at infill and commercial, I think it is so essential that we look at our already developed areas. Everybody who knows anything about housing and about the climate would say that. And I would like us to consider the same that we are in the southeast quadrant with the PUDs, that there be parcels for gardens, that there be an attractive green space so that those residents could also have that quality of life that we all value here in South Burlington. So I just want people to know that I believe that the crisis will not be over in 25 years. So I don't want these parcels to be up for grabs again in 25 years. They serve us well, up to $240 million in 20 years, according to the Earth Economics report. Just imagine seeing our homes washed out, as we saw in other parts of Vermont with Tropical Storm Irene, and the amount of funds that we would have to give in order to rebuild. But not only funds, the human lives that will be devastated, just like we have seen in our state and in other states and in other countries throughout our world. This is smart planning, and I am embracing this 100% with a few minor tweaks. That less than 4 acres, I want us to use the land efficiently and to think very carefully about what size our new homes should be and how they should be situated. I would also like us to look at the Natural Resources Conservation Committee's recommendations to have an independent wildlife biologist or ecologist review any suggested alterations to a habitat block or a habitat connector. That is what our technical review requires in our land development regulations. It's the same. We're talking about the official city map. It should also be an independent review. I already talked about the community gardens that I'd like to see as part of our civic space. And I also think that it's important for us to consider what the master plan, I want to understand that more, for people who simply want to build one home out of, what could potentially be more homes that a future landowner might build. And I would also like to really put our heads together for the TDRs. I think we have to think very carefully about how those TDRs are going to be regulated. And the management plans for the conservation PUD. So that's my list of 6 topics. These are not showstoppers. These are not reasons for us to not approve these land development regulations. Therefore, I, in very good conscience and with taking great pride in our city and in our volunteers and gratitude, I will gladly vote yay.
Can I just ask, with those 6 items you listed, are those some of the priorities that you would want the planning commission to dig into at some point?
Yeah, at some point, yes.
Tim, did you want?
I just have a few brief comments because we're getting to 8:30 and we have other agenda items, so.
We have till 8:45.
8:45. So I just want to point out some facts here, and one of the facts is that we went for 3 years in interim zoning. Please don't forget that, 3 years that the Planning Commission worked on this and also worked on some injected inclusionary zoning changes that interrupted the process of trying to create the conservation PUDs. But now all that work has come to fruition with a 7-0 vote. A 7-0 vote out of the Planning Commission in favor of these land regulation changes. And to me, it's like there are a lot of competing interests in this city about this subject, right? You have housing developers, landowners, you have affordable housing advocates, you have conservationists, you have climate change activists, and some of these people overlap with each other, right? And the fact is, if you went and polled each of them, they would say, I am not happy with these changes. They either go too far or they don't go far enough, right? And to me, and I've said this before at previous meetings, that's almost the achievement for a compromise that seems to be well balanced, and that means we've probably hit it right on the mark. And I give the Planning Commission a lot of credit for that. Because you got to ask yourself at the end of the day, what is it that makes South Burlington desirable? Desirability can mean different things to different people, but if we don't strike the right balance for desirability, it won't be desirable anymore. And one of the big elephants in the room has got to be those two words, climate change. We need to maintain those forest blocks and habitat blocks that Vermont was before people got here, and also then interleave with it the housing that we need. And don't tell me there's a housing shortage. I mean, let's talk about Rise, not finished. Hill Farm gets a zoning change for housing, a lot of housing. O'Brien Hillside Farm, hundreds of units. Cider Mill 2, the roads are being built, hundreds of units. Spear Meadows is being built now. They got the roads going in, like almost 60 units. And the Long property will probably be developed as well. There's no shortage of housing developments going on, but the demand is outstripping the supply because people are coming from out of state because either they're fleeing the pandemic or they're fleeing what they perceive as climate change pressure. So we have a lot of competing interests, and these regulations strike a nice balance for it. So that's why I'm in favor of this, and I'm going to go ahead and vote to accept them as they are. And there will be time and opportunity for changes afterwards, which we need, and which Paul has said that we need some work on the generic PUDs for specific applications within the city. So I'm entirely happy. The only other person that's happy is UVM because they got a clause in the regulations that kind of exempts them according to 42 VSA 4413. So, and I'm unhappy with that, but I think that this builds the whole framework of the fact that what we have in front of us is doable. And let's do it now, because we've spent 3 years waiting for it.
Thank you. Matt, you want to say something?
Sure, thank you. I just want to acknowledge the incredible amount of hard work that volunteers and city staff have put into these land development regulations. I am not unaware of that, and I am very appreciative of that. And also the work that volunteers who weren't part of the planning process and the committee process, but contributed their time to sit in meetings, to listen in, to offer comments. I think we all do appreciate everyone's civic involvement in this. And I'd like to acknowledge one of the planning commissioners who is in the room who I've come to know over the last few years and respect, Mike Mittag. We talked about, no one was talking about climate change mitigation, and he was right, because these land development regulations do talk about climate change mitigation, and Mike was right to say how people weren't talking about that. When it comes to climate change, it's not about emissions reductions, though. These land development regulations don't focus on emissions reductions, quite the opposite. If you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you build where the jobs are, you build housing. If you want to reduce gasoline consumption, you build housing where the infrastructure is. That's what the Climate Action Plan says. It doesn't say clear-cut Heinsberg, but leave South Burlington untouched. Not far from it. We have the infrastructure. We have the jobs. We need the housing. And this takes away much of our housing. One of the truest statements said tonight was, we need to save space for ourselves. I understand that sentiment. I just don't agree with it. We need to make space for neighbors, for people across all economic spectrums, to be able to live in our city. So we're not an exclusive ritzy suburb, but we're inviting all people to our city. And we can't do that unless we have affordable housing. I heard a comment tonight, concerned about the pines on Kennedy, about how they were torn down and how making room for houses. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I have friends that live in that neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood. But it's not to make way for rich houses. We approved 2 buildings, permanently affordable, 75 units. Yes, we missed the pines, but thank goodness there's a place for South Burlington residents, new South Burlingtons to live of low income and modest means. I came to South Burlington in 2013. I volunteered because I fell in love with the city right away for the Planning Commission. The City Council thought differently. They appointed me to the Development Review Board. While on the Development Review Board, as anyone who's on the Development Review Board can acknowledge, people come to you and say, why is it this way? Why shouldn't it be that way? And we explain, you're in the wrong meeting. We interpret the land development regulations. We don't write them. They're written by the Planning Commission and they're approved by the City Council after a robust debate. Well, I thought we could change some things. I didn't. And then I realized, oh, I have to run for City Council in order to change things. So I did. But now that I'm here and I see the land development regulations given to us, and I come up with 22 suggestions, clarifications, edits, possible amendments, not that I expect to win every vote, not that I expect everyone to agree, but at least a discussion, at least a forwarding to the Planning Commission and say, review these, tell us which ones are workable, which ones aren't. Tell us which ones are larger policy discussions that you should have, the 5 of you, and which ones that we can implement right away. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. So I know I'm on the losing end of this vote, but I'm a patient man. And I look forward to working with the Planning Commission in the future.
Thank you. Tom, you got your hand up?
So I think voters need to know where their elected officials stand on these things. And I just want to say I agree with everything Councilor Cota just said, and I don't think I can say it better, but it's important for them to hear from me why I'm going to vote no on these regulations. We have an affordability and a housing crisis in this region, and South Burlington is just south of Burlington. This is where housing should be. I would accept these arguments and many of these conservation PUD mandate requirements and many of the changes or the things in these rules that conserve land. If we were talking about Shelburne or Hinesburg or Milton or areas that don't have municipal sewer and infrastructure water, as well as broadband services, this is where housing can occur. And as soon as I heard in September that the conservation PUD mandate was being approved by the Planning Commission, I raised my hand and I raised my concerns to both the council with a couple of emails, as well as to the city manager, and as well as many of the planning commissioners. And so as soon as I heard that it was going in this direction, I wanted it known that I think mandating conservation PUDs with an arbitrary 70% is not smart development. That is forcing conservation on land connected to municipal services with Virgins clay, where you can't do much with Virgins clay. I grew up in the Southeast Quadrant. I know what this land is good for and what it's not. This is a good place for housing when the ecology allows for it. So I don't support these regulations because I don't think they struck the right balance. And similar to what Councilor Cota just said, those 22 changes, which were so thorough, and some of them were just easy, low-hanging fruit, we have time. And if we had acted a month ago, we would have had time to take solid, thoughtful changes to these regulations well before the April 6th. So I think this is a flaw in the process, and I don't know why we didn't charge them to pursue these things. And for those reasons, I can't support this because this is going to exacerbate our climate crisis. This is going to spread our infrastructure, force redundant infrastructure, and have people have longer commutes in electric cars, requiring more roads, more services, more plowing, more harder, more expensive public transportation. We need to accept our geographic proximity to the largest city in the state and allow for the housing where we have infrastructure already laid in the ground that all of our taxpayers have paid for and are paying for. I want South Burlington to be an inclusive, welcoming community that allows housing for everybody at every income level access good schools, good rec paths, good parks, a great new city hall, a great library, and walking distance to our new city center. These regulations sadly don't achieve that. And I, for one, support all 6 of the very well articulated small changes that Sandy Dooley sent to us in an email this afternoon. And I, as one counselor, would love to move that those 6 changes be considered by the Planning Commission as soon as possible, and if not, enacted. With that, I'll say I'm going to vote no, and I hope the voters understand why.
I need to push back a little bit on the emissions and the infrastructure, and I'm sorry, Helen, I
Go
hope
ahead.
you will recognize me. As I said, there is no downzoning occurring. I think that the hope was there would be a lot more upzoning occurring. Where that upzoning could occur are in places that might make more sense, which is close to our employment centers and our schools, on our already developed parcels. And where are our students living? We know that they've been living in single-family homes on East Terrace, on my street, Myers Court, on other streets like Pine Tree Terrace. We need housing for individuals and students and people who can enter the workforce, being able to rent or to purchase a condo and live close to their places of employment. They do not need to necessarily move into the single-family home when they are a single person moving in for a job. So that is the kind of housing that we are lacking, to be quite honest, in addition to affordable housing. I don't think that developing more developments like O'Brien's throughout the Southeast Quadrant would solve the emissions problem. I think that we can develop more smartly that would solve it even more by having it be on those bus lines. And that's what I like about the Hill Farm property being upzoned to have up to 500 homes. We'll see what ends up. Because people have been saying for many years, since I've been on the council, that Tilly Drive and that those medical facilities there, it's too bad that there wasn't a bus that could bring people there. Well, now with these new residences there, we're giving the ride GMT a reason to happen in that part of our city. Wouldn't that be a bonus? And talking about infrastructure, if you look at the map, where those PUDs are going to go, that's where our infrastructure is, in the Southeast Quadrant. They are not avoiding infrastructure. They put those PUDs specifically where our infrastructure is. Now, with regard to the 22 amendments in the process, the 6 amendments that Sandy brought forward are all verbatim almost within Matt's. So he clearly was reaching out, right? And we've already been through them. Number 1, sending out changes to landowners. That's been addressed. We don't do that. Number 2, the footprint lots. Our planning and zoning director addressed that at our January 10th meeting. Number 3, I could keep going, talking about the change from 1.8 acres to 4 units. I agree. Let us take that up. That's a minor change that can happen. This should not hold up these land development regulations, right? Remove NRP zoning designation. I disagree, and I believe that that has been discussed already by the Planning Commission. The steep slopes, add methodology for determining the slope. I saw the Planning Commission's discussion on this. There is methodology for determining the slope. Habitat block overlay district, strike the habitat block. I'm not going there. Habitat connector overlay district, let's strike that. I'm not going there. Let's keep going. Wetland protection standards, let's conform to state standards instead of being a leader like we have always been. I'm not going there. Let's lead. Let's keep going. Strike all these amendments about setback provisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This has been gone through, and as we heard, and I'm sorry for the echo, as we have heard, this is a web, a very carefully constructed web. We have seen these ideas. I attended enough Planning Commission meetings in order to know these ideas have been discussed. But as has been said, there is a web, a careful balance. And I do not find these amendments to have a life. They have a pair of legs. I think they have been discussed, and I think it is quite unfair assertion that this process has denied the opportunity for us to review these. These have been reviewed. I've looked at them, I've read them, and I've rejected the majority of them, as has our planning commission. And when I go door to door and talk to neighbors, they too reject these amendments. So I find these land development regulations to actually have the people behind them. And I've been speaking a lot.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm the only one who hasn't spoken, and I plan to vote in favor of the LDRs. I am also in favor of encouraging and supporting the Planning Commission to continue completing their work on the various PUDs. I agree we need to look at the TDRs. We had a subcommittee, I think Tim was on that committee, weren't you? And those need to be considered. I truly believe that there, with some creativity and work with current underutilized developments within the city, we could find some really exciting ways to develop affordable housing on all different levels, that where there are services, where there already is transportation, where there is the ability to potentially walk to services. I don't believe all parts of the southeast quadrant are the place for massive development. I think the LDRs have identified smart growth and concentrated development, and I think that addresses that. There will be a lot of new housing in the southeast quadrant. I don't know what the prices will be. Probably more expensive than the population Chris Tremblay was talking about, but I guess we need housing on all levels, and it will be pretty dense. So, you know, I agree with the comments that it is really vital to have a city with some open space. People need that for all sorts of reasons. It just so happens that as the conversation and recognition of climate change as a crisis finally made it to the front page and to most people's consideration, that some of these regulations and planning do help us address that. I just can't imagine if everything was as densely developed as people would like. You take away the habitat blocks, you do this, you do that, and we have the weather. We have an Irene, but it's in Chittenden County. The impact of that on the infrastructure of our committee and our city and those surrounding is phenomenal, because this is where the jobs are, right? This is where we need to have people earning a living, providing health care, providing higher education. Well, if the roads get washed out and the homes get washed out, great, but the effect on the those businesses is pretty intense. If we can achieve thoughtful, dense housing, conserve important parts of our city that are undeveloped now, and look to working creatively with businesses that, you know, are defunct now or they're half empty. I mean, maybe some of the banks might think about, well, you know, we really don't need three levels of offices because no one's coming into the banks. They're doing it online or Zooming or whatever. Maybe you can have housing on top of businesses, buildings that already exist, that have already been built and need to be refurbished. There's so many things that we could, I think, work on, and they're doing them all over the country. We're not inventing anything. we just need to identify some pretty good ideas and develop the cooperation and the collaboration to make that happen. And not, until we do that, just destroy what I think can be the saving grace of this community. So I'm strongly in favor of them. I think we need to continue and complete the other parts of IZ, not under IZ, but we certainly had some studies done that I think helped identify some of the critical issues and how to address them. So I am
Can we
ready-
call the vote?
I am ready for the vote. So
I think you should do, do
we have to do a roll call.
you want me to?
So the motion before us is to approve the LDRs as presented. Correct. By the Planning Commission
With the slight amendments that
with
we
that
made.
slight amendment that they agreed to.
Do you want me to call?
Yes.
Do you want to do it?
You may do it.
Megan,
Yay.
Tim,
Aye.
Matt,
No.
Tom,
A.
Ellen,
A. He said, A. Did you say nay, Tom, or A?
nay.
A.
A. So you're voting in favor?
Nay with
Oh,
an N.
nay.
No.
I'm sorry.
Like a horse.
Maybe
Nay.
yes and no would be a better. So I vote yes. So it appears as if
It's a 3-2 vote, it passes.
it
It's
passes.
adopted.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to,
Can we take a
oh.
3-minute break?
okay, we will take a 10-minute break.
3 minutes, 3 minutes.
3-minute break.
Thank you.
The South Burlington City Council meeting of February 7th, 2022, and we are at item 10 on the agenda, considering an extension of the mask mandate currently in place. So Jesse, give us some update.
Sure. So, just as a reminder for those on camera or on GoToMeeting, the state statute that was passed requires councils to revisit this mandate every 30 days. So it hasn't technically been 30 days, but it's 30. It will be more than 30 days at your next meeting. So we have included in your packet an extension of the mandate we currently have in place. It's always also your prerogative to change it or to do whatever you would like with the mandate under associated state statute. That's all.
Okay, and what you did say is that our numbers are down a little.
Our numbers as reported by VDH are down significantly, 250 to 95, I think, is that right?
But the challenge is everyone's doing home.
Right, so the data, while I very much trust the data collection systems, those are the PCRs that have been done in the state, in the city. It does not necessarily consider those who may have tested positive with an antigen test and not moved forward with a PCR test.
Is the state administering as many PCR tests or has as many sites as it's had in the past so that people have access to them?
I believe so.
Okay. But they also have access to the boxes that they may have ordered from, Say Yes, was it Say Yes Vermont? And then also the feds might be.
Yeah.
But
And the
they'll-
school and child care centers are
Right.
distributing them.
And I was just in Walgreens getting something at 4 o'clock and they had tons of them.
$23 a box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and with.
Well, I didn't buy any.
Well, no, I'm
but-
just saying, and Vermont has mandated that insurance companies cover those starting December 1st. It was retroactive to December 1st, not January 15th, as
Was
it's
that
been
right?
advertised everywhere else.
I'll have
So
to-
if any of you have purchased a Binax test, antigen test, from any drugstore after December 1st, and your insurance company rejected it, submit it again and appeal and put a comment in there that Vermont is requiring since December 1st on.
And I do know that the masks too, you know, what do they call these respirator masks? That they are also, we're receiving them in the mail from the federal government, from the state. And that my husband also found N95 masks at our neighborhood drugstore. And, you know, the science says that as we learn to live with this virus, these masks for people who do not wish to expose themselves are quite efficient at protecting. I think that's important for us to consider as well. I have to just jump in here because I've given this thought too, that I am prepared to remove the mandate citywide. The question I have is with regard to the public library and our city employees who are serving the public. That is, if I were a business owner, in my business, my employees would be wearing a mask. It would be customer service. So I see it as a customer service question. I think that in addition to the sickness and the disease and the deaths that we have unfortunately been having to deal with, there's the mental health crisis that the pandemic has begun. And we see it on both sides. We see it on the sides of people who do not want to have their freedom to choose their behaviors, taken away from them. We see it on the side of those who feel that their mobility is being reduced because people do not want to wear masks or get vaccinated. And so it's on both sides. And this is something that we are, as a society, going to have to continue to really think about and discuss. But since these masks that at least 3 of us are wearing here are available, I feel that, for those like myself and my daughter and my family who really do not wish to catch COVID, that the masks do protect us. I truly do believe that. As much as people want to send me emails saying that they don't work, I'm sorry. I accept, that freedom is important when we have other options to ensure public safety. And I think we have those options.
Okay. Other,
We're not.
so
no actions
before
then?
us is the, if we wish to continue requiring the mask mandates in public buildings
Yeah.
that are not owned by
Right.
the city, but just in general businesses, then we need to vote in favor of the resolution that's in our packet, because
Even though
that's the one that's in place right now.
No, I don't think so. I think that's Tom's original resolution.
No, it isn't. This
Remember, we had this problem the last time, and I had to have it reprinted from your office.
Where is his language? I read it a couple
So
of times.
there were 3 options, and
So-
Tom's had the exception for the children under 2 and about
Yeah, no, we
30
did
other
too.
little health things, and that was not in the original. Andrew, help me out here.
No, I think
Yeah,
it
the one-
was.
Yeah, it was the under 2 and people with health reasons were always exempt.
Yeah, Tim, my change, my version just had the one opt-out provision.
Okay,
That was the
okay,
only
so
difference.
this is not yours, Tom?
This is what we supported. This is what is in
I
place.
stand corrected.
Okay,
I apologize.
so, what is your pleasure?
Well, was Williston lifting theirs yet? Is Burlington lifting theirs?
Burlington renewed theirs.
They renewed it?
Burlington did.
And Williston, we don't know? Right, so
Chester never had one, I learned.
I've been having an email interchange with somebody who's a nurse at the medical center that lives in South Burlington, and we've been arguing back and forth politely about, facts and figures and studies, and it kind of all boils down to, I think, is if somebody has the correct or the best, PPE that they can obtain, that it's readily available, can they get it? Are they wearing it correctly? Over the nose, good fit, pinched, and are they wearing it at all times when they need to, and in this case, in indoor public environments, right? Because what we're trying to do is to suppress transmission of a communicable disease due to aerosols that travel through the air, right? KN95 is one of the better masks that you can use. simple cloth gaiter mask is not very good, but they have to be used correctly and they have to be used when you're around other people because you don't know if you're asymptomatic or not. You could be giving it to people, not knowing it if you're not wearing a mask. And then likewise, if you are not, and you don't want to contract the disease, you would like to have some inhalation filtering to remove it before it gets in your lungs, right? So, and Omicron is extremely infectious, much more so than the Delta. But and that's why so many more people have been in the hospital and so many more people have died is because it's infected so many more people. It's a simple population problem, right? So, I mean, I feel like we shouldn't relax it yet out of an overwhelming, prudent amount of responsibility towards the citizens that shop in South Burlington to make sure that they don't get infected with a disease that could kill them. And we don't have control over this yet. Yes, the numbers are falling, but I don't know when the next variant's going to come along and get around it and cause another surge. And I hope that doesn't happen. Personally, I will be wearing a mask in a store for many months to come. But last thing I want to do is go into a store and see somebody that's not wearing a mask, who maybe is asymptomatic, who's spreading the germs everywhere, the virus. So I think we got to be very considerate. And there is this argument about personal freedoms, but there are a lot of personal freedoms that are kind of contained by our legal environment for society, such as you can't just drive a car without a license, you have to wear your seatbelt. There's a bunch of them that constrain us, right? And there's something so simple about wearing a mask for 30 minutes while you shop in a grocery store or a market. It's not a huge inconvenience, right? And you might be saving somebody's health by doing that. So I think I'm in favor of just another month, just leaving it alone. We would have to pass another resolution to reinstate it, right?
We do.
That's my reasoning. And so it's out of concern for everybody.
And I hear that. But Tim, with this mask, unless you stand for a very long time talking to someone who is contagious, you're protected. So grocery shopping for 30 minutes wearing this mask, that person without the mask will probably not infect you. And I say that saying this is me just, hearing what I pay attention to. So don't hold me to it. So I am not Dr. Levine, but I truly do want you to know that I have taken this very seriously. I have constantly been wearing a mask. Every time they said, here's the next change in our understanding of this virus. Here's what we need to do. I followed those. I've got the 3 shots. My daughter is vaccinated. It's not because I'm an automaton. It's because I truly do believe the science. And I do know that the people who are vaccinated are not dying at the rates that unvaccinated people are. Those are the facts. So I hear you, but I think that there are options for us to live with the virus as it is currently. We heard Dr. Levine use those words last week in their press conference, that we all need to live with the virus. We need to learn how to do that. It's going to be endemic now. It's not going to go away.
So I have a concern, though, if we keep going, this month you have to wear them, next month you don't because the numbers are a little bit down, and then they shoot up. I mean, you look at states where they've taken the mask mandate away, and the numbers go bonkers because lots of people think, oh, okay, now it's okay. I don't have to wear it. So I'm concerned with this going back and forth and back and forth, and if the businesses are annoyed now, they're going to continue to be even more annoyed if it's yes, no, yes, no. It's like playing stoplight. Tom?
So I want to say a couple of things. One, I agree with you, Councilor Emery, on almost all your points. And I've gone back and forth on this. And one point I want to just speak to Tim Barrett raised, Councilor Barrett. You said it's not a big deal to wear a mask for 30 minutes while you're in a store. The argument that I heard from Healthy Living, Eli Lesser Goldsmith, it's another thing if you have to wear it for 8 hours, if you're working the front lines, if you're mandated to wear that mask. So I think we should all wear masks, and I definitely I agree with the points Councilor Emery made about how the vaccines are protecting those that chose to get vaccinated from this virus, and this really is a pandemic, or most serious for those that are choosing not to get vaccinated. and that's their choice, and that the masks are available. So I could go either way, but to the last point I heard you just say, Councilor Reilly, Chair Reilly, this will not go past April 30th, if I'm not mistaken. So this will not go on forever. I'm inclined to definitely keep it in city buildings to set the example, because I want businesses to continue to wear the mask, but I still go back to that one little carve out, that opt out, so that the healthy livings or the bread and butter farms, if they really want to just allow vaccinated individuals to not have a mask, they can put signs up, and then they can choose to opt out for the next 30 days. Giving that healthy living the ability to accept and live with the virus and allow their employees who have to work 8, 9, 10 hours and not have to wear the mask around the ears, which honestly drives me nuts when I'm wearing it all day and for 4 to 6 hours. So I support that original carve out. I could go either way on this right now. But I agree with Councilor Emery that we need to start to just accept that we have to live with this virus and accept the certain risks that come with it.
Okay, and I'm sure, Matt, you haven't changed your position, right? We can't
Everyone get
enforce it,
vaccinated,
so-
get boosted, wear a mask. If we're in the city building, absolutely, we can enforce that mandate. But we cannot enforce a mandate in private businesses or ask our clerks and our storekeepers to become police. And the police aren't going to enforce it. So how can we pass a law that we're not going to enforce? I will vote against any attempt to extend this mask mandate, but I would support it within the city.
Have there been any situations with the police over the past 20 days?
The police are not enforcing this.
Right,
all
but have
calls
they
are-
received calls? Have they?
I've received calls.
You have?
Yeah.
They didn't call
received
Tom
calls.
because he said, call me. Why don't you just forward them?
I've gotten like 4 calls. They're calling.
And have you had trouble with, I mean, there was one issue in the library. I mean, Matt, you say we can't enforce it out there. But it's okay to enforce it here without the police, because what? We're
Well-
City Hall and people are
well,
gonna just listen to us?
The police work for us. So Jesse can call the police.
So, we are not doing that.
Okay.
We are enforcing solely through education and friendly cajoling, I would say, in our buildings. You know, you heard from the chief at the last meeting, enforcing mask mandates are not how I think we as a community have decided that we want our police to interact with our community, that it's not a productive, good relationship building exercise. So what I have been doing and what our team here in the building are doing, and we have amazing staff who are excellent at de-escalating and encouraging people to seek alternatives, are having those conversations. How can I help you? Can I bring something to your car? Blah, blah, you have 5 minutes and you need to finish your business here, et cetera. Here's a mask for your child. And for the businesses who have called me, or more often the patrons of the businesses, again, it's education, here's signage, here's why the council deemed this important, blah, 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 blah. But the police are not enforcing it. It is all education and cajoling.
But they haven't been bombarded with phone calls, was my question.
I've probably received a dozen, and I believe that every time they're calling dispatch is just telling them to call us, to call me.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's
Well,
my
we
job.
appreciate your good work.
Or call Tom, I guess.
Or, yeah, he offered.
And it's not just Dr. Levine. I mean, this is something that, you know, came out of Johns Hopkins. I received their public health updates. And we are turning a corner where we have to learn how to live with it, and it will be up to people's own, you know, what do I want to say? Their comfort with risk taking. So
Okay, I mean, there's probably nothing more to say. Tom?
Point of clarification. So Jesse, I was listening, I swear, but when does this expire? And where I might be, just to settle this conversation, is to not renew the city-wide tonight. And if 2 councilors want to reconsider this and call a special meeting right before that deadline, before our next meeting, maybe we can in fact renew it citywide. But maybe that's going to thread the needle on this, give us all some more time to think about it, not renew citywide up to that date, And if we do want to act quick and continue it for 30 days with whatever changes in our minds, we can pivot and do so. I'm also comfortable with extending it for the city buildings if that's possible to do tonight.
So there's two different expiration dates. One, you have a mandate in place right now that you voted to put in place on January 18th. So I think if you take no action tonight, including not repealing that one, that continues until February 19th, because it technically went into effect on the 19th. The reason it's before you tonight is that it expires after 30 days, or the council has to take it up after 30 days. So if you want it to last beyond the February 19th, you need to vote to do some set of parameters tonight. The other part of your question, Tom, is the legislature has only empowered municipalities to put these mandates in effect through the month of April. So unless the legislature takes other action, which they very well could, any mandate that you have in place would expire by the end of April, and you would still need to revisit things every 30 days.
So I guess my question is, I would vote to keep it in place. I'm in the same
Yeah.
sync, I guess, as
Can I just
Councilor
make
Barrett.
one comment? Or do you want to, I just have one
No,
last
I
comment.
mean,
Go ahead. Sorry.
So, but it sounds as if we have three people who want to keep it in the city buildings, I think, and allow the business owners, public buildings, to go mask-free if they wish, or they can require it in their business, but, we're not requiring it. So if that is the case, we would, looking at the resolution that's on our packet,
So-
on the
I think you can just approve a set of parameters, and then basically what you're articulating is going back to the first resolution we
Yeah.
had in place in December.
So you'd put in the, now therefore be it resolved, you put a period after, within city-owned and operating buildings that are open to the public, period.
Point of clarification, Chair Ely?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I would support, I think a most reasonable path forward is to let the citywide mandate stay in place through until its expiration on February 19th, giving us time to possibly pivot and change, and that way we're not frantically switching back and forth. People will know that the 30 days is going to expire at that time. That's where I am. I like leaving it in place through to February 19th. That gives us more time to collect perspective on data.
Well, we don't have a meeting before that. Our meeting is on the 22nd. So then we would
Then I-
have like 3 days that's in, la-la land. Who knows what the rule is? I mean, I think tonight it would make sense. I mean, it just
Could we-
looking around, do most people want to keep it in place in the city-owned buildings? At least.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then it sounds like the
I want more.
majority do not want to impose it on privately owned public, businesses and stuff.
I mean, we
And
could
I would-
include the language where that would expire, that second part. I mean, that's what Counselor Chittenden is.
Oh, just that language expires?
Oh, yeah, so, February.
Well, we can just, we don't have to expire it. We just have the date of what we pass becomes effective on the 19th. So on
Okay.
the
Yeah.
19th, it's just city-owned buildings.
That would
I
just,
mean,
that's,
on the 20th, I guess, whatever day.
that's yeah, so we don't have to do any action in order for that to occur, right?
No, because don't we have to include this, make sure the city?
So I think if you take no action tonight, everything expires on the 19th.
Everything.
If you want something to continue beyond February 19th, you have to proactively approve that tonight.
Right.
I think regardless, any mandate you have to revisit every 30 days. So putting something that is going to expire midway through with something that's going to continue on for those 30 days. I made eyes at Colin to make him
So-
come up and answer that
Can
question.
you do that? I mean, I'm not in supportive of it, but it sounds like that's what the council wants to
Well,
do.
what, can we have a motion to maintain the current one through April 30th right now? Just have a vote on that straight?
No, we can't.
You
Why
have to
not?
revisit it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry. You have to revisit it every 30 days.
Oh,
So through October, so you could have a motion to continue what we have now.
Right,
Through March 7th.
March
You can
7th,
make
okay.
that motion.
Can I make that motion right now and then have it go down so we can have the other motion after that?
Oh, okay.
So I
So
move
you're
that we can.
moving what's on the thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I move that we have, that we pass the current regulation until March 7th or 7th, as it is today.
And I would second that. Are you ready for the vote?
Yes.
Okay.
So, no,
Yeah?
I have a discussion. So this seems like we're doing this so that we can put on the record where people are. I would support that motion, Tim, Councilor Barrett, if we added out my carve out. I would make a friendly amendment to allow for businesses to opt out, so that we would effectively make the entire city of South Burlington mask required unless you choose not to. Right now, with this expiring, it's no masks required unless you choose to require it. There is a big difference between opt-in and opt-out. So I will vote no with this motion unless we amend it to include that carve-out.
I would support the carve out now because we have the masking in place. So that would only mean that the people who want to remove the mask requirement, that they would have to act and everybody else would remain status quo.
Just want to remind everybody that over 900,000 Americans have died because of this disease, and we were remiss in December to not reimpose the mask mandate, and we don't know how many people in South Burlington became infected because of that and have added to the death toll in the state of Vermont. We don't know, but we do know that this variant is extremely infectious, and we shouldn't be fooling around with it. And until we have distinct guidance from our health department to do otherwise, I think it is a prudent thing to just leave it in place until the next 30-day expiration, and we'll probably keep it until April 30th, and by then, if the legislature says it's not valid, it's done. And we don't have any control over it at that point. I just want to make that point.
The recommendation of the health department is if the numbers are increasing, if you are experiencing a peak, you should wear a mask. But if the numbers are decreasing, it is only recommended.
And we don't know what the rate is for people doing home tests. So there's a whole swath of data we don't even have. In general, if the PCRs are decreasing, that's probably the trend, and that's what they predicted would happen. So let's just go ahead and have the vote.
Well, I will move to amend the motion to add in the language from the previous Tom's version that added the ability for a business to opt out.
I would second that amendment.
Okay. So do you understand what we're voting on? It's
First the amendment,
Yeah, I don't remember the amendment.
which is to
Sorry,
opt, you
Councilor
can,
Chittenden.
businesses can opt out.
So we're
you want me-
removing the mandate on businesses and replacing it with an opt-out.
Tom, why don't you have him explain it?
Tom?
So I'd love for Colin to chime in here too, but effectively the mandate will be in place. The city of South Burlington and public places will require masks unless, and Colin came up with some phenomenal language in the Tom's version from our last meeting, which just said unless an organization explicitly chooses to not require masks.
And how do you opt out, or what's the signage, or what's the requirement for someone that wants to opt out? Do we state that?
You have that,
Do we
Colin?
make that
It's a
clear?
neon orange sign, right?
Tom, do you want me to read the language?
Please, that would be great. I proposed the neon pink sign, but that was not in Colin's language.
I have it here.
I think neon pink
Okay,
is breast cancer.
so Jesse has the language, so if you want to read
Yep,
it.
I'm going to read it right now. I'm also going to share it for those on computer. A location that is open to the public in the city of South Burlington may opt out of requiring face coverings inside their establishment, provided it is clearly posted on all entrances to the location in a manner that can be clearly seen and easily read by all potential entrants that the establishment has opted out of the city of South Burlington's mask mandate and that face coverings are not required inside the establishment or location.
And that takes effect immediately upon passage?
Well, I mean, the way we previously drafted it was the next day The reality is we're going to need time to get out the messages to businesses and provide
Okay.
signage. And
But it's not till the 19th, right? That's not the next 30-day interval. It is
it would,
when we
notice it.
vote on it and then you implement it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
30 days from that date, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
But I think we have to vote on the amendment.
Yep.
All right, so we have a friendly amendment, right? Do you accept that as a friendly amendment? Then we just have to vote on the motion, right?
We're going to vote on it.
Pardon?
We're going to vote on it.
We either have to vote on the amendment or it has to be accepted as a friendly. So do you want us to vote on the
accept it as
amendment
a
or not?
friendly-
Let's vote on the amendment.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Let's vote on the amendment.
Okay,
The
so
amendment.
we're just voting on this opt-out stuff.
That's right.
Okay, so, any more discussion? You ready for the vote? Okay. All in favor of the opt-out language?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Do we need a roll call? Yeah, we do. Okay, so Tim Barrett,
Nay.
Matt Coda,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Yes.
That's not a nay, that's an aye. And the chair votes no, so it is adopted 3-2. So now we go back to the motion with this amendment. And that is to,
So it's what you have in place, if I'm following what you're doing, it's what you currently have in place plus the opt-out language.
Yes.
okay.
So, do we still in discussion, Chair?
Yes,
So just so I understand the procedure for when I get the calls, which will be, you are going to message the business community in the ways that you did before to let them know that this is the procedure for opting out of the mask mandate. The mask mandate was not rescinded, but that in fact, additional language was added to allow businesses the opportunity to opt out of the mask mandate with certain signage or notification.
Correct.
Good, thank you.
okay. Are we ready for that vote? We're clear on what we're voting? Okay, do we need, oh, Tom?
Mute.
You're
Mute,
muted.
mute.
Tom, you're muted.
Thank you for that question, Councilor Coda, for clarification, but we are voting to extend this for 30 days with this amendment taking effect immediately.
Yes.
Yes. As
Thank
soon
you.
as we can get out the notice to the community.
Thank you.
Okay.
So March 2nd, probably, right? That's our next meeting, pre-town meeting. Or maybe it's the
No,
reorganization.
our next meeting is the 22nd.
But I mean, the 30 days would be the reorganization meeting, probably.
Oh, on the 1st? No, the 1st is our town meeting, yeah.
Usually Thursday we reorganize, right?
Usually.
Our
we
town
can-
meeting is actually the 28th.
Right, February 28th.
Town meeting.
But it's virtual.
Oh, our next meeting is the 28th? I thought we
No,
were,
no,
no.
That's the pre-town meeting, that's the town meeting
Oh,
that we do
I'm
the night
sorry.
before town meeting election, which is,
Got it,
but it's
got it.
virtual this year again.
Sorry,
That's all
sorry.
right.
And it isn't even 11 o'clock.
And it's in February, because you think the town meeting has to be in March, right?
Exactly, yeah.
At least for us Vermonters.
Okay, so you ready for the vote? Do we have to do this? Yeah, we probably do, because there might be a no. Okay, so we'll start with Tim,
Nay.
Matt,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
and the chair votes no.
Yeah,
So
stay
it
with it.
passes 3-2. All right, so we're on to, what's the next item? Where's my paper? Yep, I got it. All right, so next, we need to convene as the South Burlington Liquor Control Commission to consider numerous, I'm not going to read them all.
No, read them all. I want to hear it.
Yeah. No, there must be 25 or 30.
Want me to read them? I'll read them.
No.
He did do,
Okay.
he did do it before once. It's pretty impressive, actually.
Okay, all of the published applications. So I need a motion to become the convene as the Liquor Control Commission.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the next motion would be, if you want to do this in total, I guess a motion to award either first and third, or sometimes just first and sometimes just third.
And there's also second.
And second, so all the different.
And the first and third are
As
sometimes for
presented,
one
the
place.
numerous classes of liquor licenses available in the city.
Do you
of
know
South
that it goes
Burlington.
from A to Z, Applebee's to Zen Garden?
Yeah. I will just move that we approve all the liquor licenses.
Okay, so
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
One quick
Tom,
one.
yeah.
I accessed my box and I have not read any of these, so I am going to abstain from this, but I'm trusting that the city has in fact vetted all these things and this is somewhat perfunctory. So I hope it passes, but I am going to abstain.
Okay. So, all in favor of awarding these liquor licenses signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so Counselor Chittenden abstained, so the vote is 4-0-1. All right. Now we consider entering an executive session for the purpose of discussing a proposed civil litigation settlement agreement.
Would you like a motion?
That's for what
Yes,
we-
I would
the
like a
mask.
motion.
Oh, the draft amendments.
So I move that the council make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge of civil litigation to which the city is a party and confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the council would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
I now move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing civil litigation to which the city is a party and receiving confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the council, inviting Jesse Baker, Andrew Bolduc, Colin McNeil into the session with the council.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Discussion?
Aye.
Discussion?
Wait, Tom.
I'm
Tim's,
sorry, Tom, excuse me.
I just see a comment question in the chat from Avalon. She wants to know if we're coming back, and so I thought that would be useful to
Yes,
speak to
we are
before we.
coming back, because
so Tim's auctioneer voice, I tell you. Did you ever do that, Tim?
okay, so we, all in favor signify by saying aye?
Aye.
You guys voting at that end?
So this is
Oh,
the
you
mask.
said I couldn't hear it, okay.
We didn't sign that one. 'Cause-
Any opposed? All right, so we now go.
So,
Okay, do you guys want me to stay around or what?
Sue, if either stay around or you can do it from the recording, either one. It's up to you.
Okay,
It shouldn't, I
I'll
think.
go pour a glass of wine and stay around.
Thanks, Sue.
Oh, that sounds nice. Have one for me.
You guys,
So the last Thursday's meeting for the airport rezoning task force, it was a public hearing. Due to the snowstorm, we had to reschedule. So that will be happening on February 17th with a second hearing on March 3rd.
Okay, I have a report. Matt, do you have anything from
No, not meeting
okay,
next
Green
week.
Mountain and pension or anything? We're
We
gonna
have
hit
a
them
meeting
next time.
for the impact fees scheduled later this month. I'm not sure which day it is yet.
Okay. All right, well, let me report on the Airport Commission meeting of January 19th. It's always sort of a pain because it's like 2 days after our meeting, so it's 2 weeks later, so it's kind of old news. But anyway, a couple of good items. The infrastructure bill has awarded $4 million to the airport for each year for 4 years, plus $1 million for sustainable projects. So a lot of this infrastructure money is coming home, which is good. One of the things in terms of the construction, what they call the terminal integration project, that's consolidating the TSA to make things flow better. And where the current TSA is on the north end, that will be gone, and they're going to expand seating capacity and replace it with an expanded dining and stores and stuff. What Megan was quite interested in was what is happening, I think we all are, with the money for noise mitigation. And 19 homes came forward and all qualified. So they apply, they indicate their interest, and then they have to, and they apply, but they have to be qualified. So they do sound stuff to find out if they can reduce the noise and how loud it is. And so 19 of them were qualified. So we have the money. The airport has been awarded the money to design the changes this spring. And then, so actually go back to each house and say, okay, you're getting 7 windows and 4 doors or whatever. And then they'll go to bid this summer, and it should be completed before the end of this year. So that's the first. There's supposed to be 20, and I can't quite remember why one of them. They have a map of 50 homes, and that's the first chunk. But this 19 are sort of the test cases, and they will, we have the money for that. If these, I guess, happen and get completed, they'll move right along toward the final 30 or 31 and keep expanding that way. They hope to be able to do this, I think, to 50 homes a year. That's why it's
50
going
homes.
to take forever, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you know what street or streets these 19 homes are on?
I don't, because some are in Burlington, some are in Winooski, and some are in South Burlington.
So you talked about a map. Is that a map that we can take a look at?
I don't have the map. We've requested it, and we have a meeting next week where we'll probably get the map.
And could you immediately send me the PDF? Because I have people waiting my phone calls.
I will try to do that. I'm going
Yeah.
to be away, so I may not go to that meeting, but I
Okay.
can get it sent to you. And then the other thing I think is just sort of interesting with the stimulus grants for the airport. The CARES Act granted a little over $1.4 million to the airport for their local share of contribution on the FAA grants, because they've drawn down quite a bit of money on different grants to do different projects, and they were able to not have to go to the city of Burlington, I guess, or the airport funds to create the match for those projects. And then they also just received $7.6 million grant package under the American Rescue Act. So we have gotten a lot of money from the federal government to keep the airport moving along, paying all the salaries and continuing. And they're finding things keep improving. We're about parking revenues are up to like 72%. The car rental, in terms of money, is over 100% improvement from last year, but that's because they probably cost twice as much, or some of it anyways, related to the cost of a rental. But that's income for the airport as well. And, all the other revenues are getting up to close to 80% from a year ago. So things are moving, I guess, in the right direction in terms of getting the volume back.
And the job search for the director?
We haven't heard anything about that. We worked on a job description, but as you know, we're advisory. So we send this off, and I don't know where it goes.
Now, is Nick Longo being considered? Has he put his name?
I don't know, because I don't think they weren't interested in doing a search right away.
Okay, so that shows
So
some
I think-
confidence in him. I mean, he was an air traffic controller. He was
Yeah, he's
familiar.
had a lot of experience
right.
in at various airports
Aviation.
and with aviation. And I don't know, maybe they're focusing on the police to get that search done and completed before they take on the airport, since it seems to be, moving along in the right direction. And personally, I think Nick does a nice job.
Good.
So,
Yeah, good.
Okay. Any new business? Tim, you always have something. All right. All righty, so or Tom, do you have any? I keep forgetting to look at the screen. You gotta start showing up once in a while.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, and I do appreciate, even after a tough vote, that we continue to smile and be nice to each other. That's,
You can't see whether we're smiling or not anyway.
I can see it sort of in eyes, in tone.
Yep, smiling eyes.
Jordan, you good for me to close